The time is 9 a.m., and I call this meeting of the State Board of Education's Accountability Hearings Committee to order. Mr. James on our staff will call the roll to determine a quorum.
Mrs. Maxwell.
Here.
Mr. Eby.
Here.
Mr. Chairman Coppins.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have 3 members and a quorum.
Just want to take this moment to thank our staff. This process is the culmination of almost 3 years of work that has been led by Dr. Sarah Morrison, our executive director, Ms. Allie Reed, our chief of strategy, with definite expert assistance from Nathan James, Rachel Supay, Michael Derline, and others. So I want to acknowledge their hard work and the effort that's gone into bringing this to fruition. It's included meetings with consultants, stakeholders, LEAs, other advocacy organizations. So a lot of work has gone into this, and we just want to say thank you. Before we get into our public comment period, I want to offer some remarks about why we're here and go through an order of operations for the next few days, after which I will recognize my colleagues for any opening remarks they might wish to share. When the General Assembly took up our new funding formula, they added language in TCA 49-3-112, requiring the State Board of Education or a committee of its members to conduct public hearings, to report on the public schools' performance and how the LEA or public charter school spending decisions may have affected the ability of the LEA's public schools or public charter schools to achieve performance goals. A district is called to appear for these hearings if they have a school that receives an F letter grade 2 years in a row, or a school that receives a D 1 year and an F the following year. While this process is triggered by the grade of the school, the hearings are about the response of the whole district to fix these situations. Joining me on this committee is our board chair, Mr. Bob Eby of the 3rd Congressional District, who is a former chairman of the Oak Ridge Board of Education, and Dr. Ina Maxwell of the 6th Congressional District, the former director of schools for Cumberland County School System. We have required the attendance of the directors of schools, finance officers, chairs of the local school board, as well as charter executive directors, chairs of the charter boards, and the authorizing district officials. To be clear, this process is about the students of Tennessee. This is about our kids having all the opportunities they can have. To make it clear that all of Tennessee's students need to be educated and prepared for a successful future, no matter what neighborhood they live in, no matter what their zip code is, and no matter what school they are zoned to. We will not lose sight of the fact that each and every child is a person of worth. We will not lose sight of the fact that this is about children having the best chance at the American dream. While we concentrate on the processes that bring success and seeing where they are falling short, we will always remember that this is not about adults, except as those adults are instrumental to the future of students. As chairman, I pledge to keep it centered on Tennessee's students. How will the process work this week? This meeting will be a single, multi-day meeting of the committee. At appropriate times, we will recess the committee for breaks and lunch. At the end of each day, we will recess until the following morning. The committee itself will not adjourn until the conclusion of the final hearing on Thursday, March 26. Hearings will begin at 12:45 today. At the end of each individual hearing, the committee has 2 options. We can recommend that the Department of Education adopt a corrective action plan, or we can take no action. While the underlying statute, TCA 49-3-101-115, authorizes the board to recommend a corrective action plan or audit and investigation, but in our rule, the audit and investigation is reserved for the second round of hearings. The state board does not have the authority to close schools. As a courtesy to other members of the board, any member of the board may join us on the dais and participate in the discussion, but only members of the committee will vote on the recommendations. We will begin on time for each hearing. As chairman, I will keep the hearings moving, making certain that members have plenty of time to ask the questions and get answers. This committee will make recommendations about each school district, and these recommendations will be transmitted to the whole State Board of Education, which will take them up and vote on the recommendations at the next meeting. All hearings except Metro Nashville, Memphis-Shelby County, and Hamilton County will be 60 minutes in length. These larger districts will be 75 minutes in length. The structure of hearings will be 5 minutes for a quick refresher on hearing goals and review of the eligible schools. This will be followed by the opening question, leading into a time of questions and answers of the committee, of the district leaders, sorry. This will be followed by time for the committee to deliberate and vote. One point that I would like to make, and alluded to it in the opening remarks, is that this process, I want to make sure that LEAs, district leaders, staff, and others understand, as well as we do, that this is not about us. This is not about you. This is about 1 million students across the state of Tennessee whose futures have been entrusted to us to make sure that they get the best education possible to prepare them for life. And so we will have to ask some hard pointed questions. That's not personal. That's not about us. That's not about you, but that's about getting to the heart of the matter to make sure that these schools have the resources they need to ensure that these students are successful. And so all of us are part of Tennessee's education ecosystem, from the legislature to the state board, to the department, to the LEAs, to the school leaders, to the teachers, to the students and the parents and the families. And so as we go forward today and in the days that follow, I would like for us to keep that focus and understand that we're all a part of a system working to ensure that Tennessee students succeed. At this time, I will recognize my fellow members for opening remarks. Mr. Eby, Chairman Eby.
Thank you, Chairman Cobbins. I think you said it very well. Our focus is on the students. And as long as we keep the focus on that, then I think this committee will have served its purpose. I will say one thing. This past Friday, gave a talk to the East Tennessee Economic Council, talked about these accountability hearings and about our master plan and some other activities going on. The accountability hearings was what I got most questions about, and the people are most interested that these will be used for the students. Thank you.
Dr. Maxwell.
Thank you, Chairman Cobbins. I just want to concur with my two colleagues, and I appreciate Chairman Cobbins' focus on the students. That's what we're all here for, and I look forward to productive meetings.
Thank you. At this time, I ask unanimous consent to allow the recordings of this meeting to serve as the minutes therefor. Is there objection? Without objection, so ordered. At this time, I ask unanimous consent that the board's general counsel, Rachel Supay, be designated as the committee counsel and be given questioning privileges. Is there objection? Without objection, so ordered. We're now moving into our public comment period. First, I have Brenix Wilson, who is signed up to make public comments. Please come forward to the podium. You're recognized for 3 minutes. There you are.
Hi, how are you?
How you doing?
Good.
All right.
Ready?
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Brandon Wilson, and I'm a 5th grade student at TMVA. I love playing baseball, and I play at an elite level. My dream is to play at the University of Tennessee someday. I work really hard both on and off the field. A few years ago, I had mono. Just recently, my mono reactivated. The symptoms were worse than before. The doctors diagnosed me with chronic EBV, which means the virus stays active and makes me sick over and over again. Some days I feel okay, but other days I have really bad migraines, extreme fatigue, sore throats, and joint pain. Sleeping is the only thing that makes me feel better. Before coming to TMVA, I had already missed 17 days of school. My old school didn't really understand what I was going through. They gave me more work than I could keep up with, and when I did go to school, they seemed frustrated with me for being absent. It made school stressful and uncomfortable. That all changed when my parents enrolled me at TMVA. At TMVA, my teachers truly see me, even through a screen. They notice when I'm not feeling well. They care about me, support me, and work with me so I can keep learning even on my hard days. I take my education seriously. I know how important school is for my future, especially if I want to achieve my dream of playing college baseball. TMVA gives me the flexibility I need to rest when I'm not feeling well, while still keeping up with my academics. TMVA isn't just a school; it's a community. It's a place where students like me, whether we have medical challenges, anxiety, or have faced bullying, can feel safe, supported, and included. Because of TMVA, I can keep working toward my goals both in school and in baseball. So please support TMVA, the teachers and the staff who make a difference every day, not just for me, but for all my classmates. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Next is Casey Wilson. Please come forward to the podium. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. That's a hard speech to follow. It's very emotional. Good morning. My name is Casey Wilson, and I stand before you today not only as an educator, but as a mother of 2 high-achieving virtual students whose lives have been profoundly impacted by this model of education. I've been an educator for 15 years. Throughout my career, I've consistently led students to success in the classroom by holding high expectations and maintaining a level of effectiveness rated at a 4 or a 5 for many of those years. I recently stepped into an assistant principal role at Tennessee Virtual Academy, where I now help lead and support not just a classroom, but an entire school community. And I can tell you with confidence that I know what our students need to succeed, and I do whatever it takes to ensure they do. Because when I became an educator, students became my purpose. Too many students don't have someone to advocate for them, but that is what I choose to do every single day. As both an educator and a parent, I have seen firsthand the life-changing impact of virtual education. My daughter, Briley, is 17 years old and a junior in high school. She began her virtual journey in 5th grade during COVID. Tennessee Virtual Academy played a vital part in her education. Briley has been diagnosed with generalized anxiety and autism, and as her parent, I knew she needed stability, structure, and an environment that supported both her academic ability and her emotional well-being. Tennessee Virtual Academy gave her that foundation, and it led directly to success she is experiencing today. Today, she is thriving. She is academically strong, performs well on state assessments, and has developed independence and discipline that will serve her well in college and beyond. She wants to become a doctor, and because of the consistency and support she received through TMVA, that goal is within reach. My son's journey has been different, but just as important. Brennick's entered virtual school this year out of a medical necessity after being diagnosed with chronic EBV. This year alone, he has faced a broken arm, a broken foot, reactivated mono, and severe migraines that made functioning in a traditional school nearly impossible. Virtual education was not just helpful for him, it has been essential. At Tennessee Virtual Academy, his teachers know him, they understand his needs, he is supported, seen, and given the flexibility to continue learning despite serious health challenges. As a parent, I can stay involved and ensure he continues to grow. even during his hardest days. Because of this, my son has not fallen behind. He has remained engaged, supported, and successful. These are not isolated stories. Virtual schools serve students who are medically fragile, students with anxiety, students recovering from bullying, students who are severely behind, and students who simply need a different path to succeed. This is not a lesser option, it is a necessary option. More and more families are seeking environments where their children are not forced into a one-size-fits-all system, but are instead given the opportunity to thrive. Virtual education is not just working, it is changing lives. It has changed my children's lives. It has strengthened my purpose as an educator, and it continues to give a voice and a pathway to students who might otherwise be overlooked. I will continue to advocate for them because each and every one of them deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Next is Luke Malstadt. Please approach the podium. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members of the board. My name is Luke Malstadt, and I serve as president of Security Accreditation Safety Authority, also known as SASA. It's a nonprofit organization dedicated exclusively to K-12 school safety, security, and emergency preparedness. First off, I want to commend the state of Tennessee for its leadership in advancing strong accountability framework. This is a big deal. You guys spend a lot of time in doing it. The focus is likely going to be academic outcomes, responsibility, use of funding, district level accountability, and it's both necessary and commendable. Schools are going to be likely asked to demonstrate improvement through data planning and execution, and rightfully so. However, there's a critical component of school performance that is not being formally evaluated, at least within this process yet. Whether schools are operationally safe, secure, and truly prepared to support the outcomes we expect. Because the reality is this: academic success does not occur in isolation. As professionals in my industry, they would say nothing happens in a vacuum. It depends on stability, it depends on consistency, and it depends on whether a school environment is prepared to prevent disruption, respond to emergencies, and maintain continuity of learning. Gaps in areas such as facility security, threat assessment protocols, emergency planning, and staff preparedness do not just pose safety risks, they directly impact attendance, teacher retention, school climate, and ultimately student performance. Yet today, in most accountability models, these conditions are largely assumed, not independently verified. SASA was established to address that gap. We are an independent nonprofit accreditation authority that does not evaluate curriculum or instruction. Instead, we verify whether schools can effectively prevent, prepare for, respond to, and recover from safety-related threats using a structured, evidence-based framework aligned with state and federal agencies through their guidance as well. Our role is not regulatory. Our role is not duplicative. It is simply a validation, a verification layer. It's a way to ensure that that what is written in plans is actually implemented in practice. As the board evaluates funding decisions, leadership effectiveness in schools, improving strategies, we believe there's an opportunity to strengthen this framework by also asking, are the operational conditions in place for those strategies to succeed? Tennessee has already taken leadership role in academic accountability. There is now an opportunity to lead nationally in what I would describe as total school accountability, where student outcomes and school safety readiness are evaluated together, not separately. SASA stands ready to support schools, districts, and the state in advancing the vision, ensuring that accountability reflects not only what students achieve, but the conditions in which they are expected to achieve it. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malstadt. We have an individual who has signed up for public comment who has not made it into the room yet. We expect him within the next 10 minutes or so. So should we just leave the public comment process open and take a break, Mr. James, or what do you recommend?
Yeah, sir, you can recess, subject to call of the chair.
Let's recess for 10 minutes. Thank you. All right, we are reconvened. Next is Mr. John Dowdy. If you would approach the podium, and you have 3 minutes for your comments. Thank you.
Hello, my name is John Dowdy. So try to keep it in 3 minutes. It's kind of a longer story. I am a single dad. Went through a divorce about 6 years ago. We co-parent really well. We do everything good with the kids. My ex-wife is a professional as well. She's a LCSW with children and things for licensed therapy. I own multiple companies here. We do animal cremations. I'm also with the alarm board, so we do government security. Been doing that for multiple years. Our son, with the divorce, was born really early, 30 weeks. Spent a lot of time in the NICU. Had a stage 2 brain bleed on his head, but we didn't really know what would be happening until he was about 5 years old. He does really well, but little developmental behind. And we've had a lot of times with the schools, behavioral issues, not wanting to redirect, things like that. So he does understand authority, but when you give him the chance with like any kid, he'll take a mile. So he started learning that in the schools where if he just acts out, he doesn't have to do it. And school boards or with the schools, their hands are tied. I understand that. They can't do a lot. I was traveling the United States a lot, so I wasn't able to really do a lot for that. My wife was professional, seeing a lot of clients and stuff, so she couldn't break away a lot to do that. So he learned that if he can act out, he can go to ISS. He has on IEPs. He's tons of help with multiple people from the school, from the state have helped him a lot. Loved him to death. So with me and him knowing I'm not in the state, sometimes he would extend that. Then he learned he can be abusive more, so he can do instead of verbal, he can do more physical and get sent home. And with that, he'd be able to watch TV. He'd be able to do other things without oversight at home, as much as someone could just be there watching him all the time when he's on clients. So we tried change schools. We tried everything. We're very involved parents. Almost every week to 2 times a week, we're on phone calls with principals, IEP, his caseworkers, tons of people trying to figure out where this is stemming from. Very heavily involved again. And so with that, we tried changing schools. We tried readapting to things that he would do, and it still just wouldn't work. He's never spent probably more than 5 days from pre-K all the way to his current 3rd grade in any classroom. Never turned in one assignment, but with the No Child Left Behind, he just kept getting pushed up and getting far behind. I worked with him in summers. He would do his work perfect. Never had a problem anywhere else except in the schoolhouse environment. So we tried changing schools, meetings after meetings. We said, I don't know what else to do. I said, you know what? I sold one of my companies. I retired. I opened up the cremation here so I can stay home all the time now. We were in the vet world. So I knew a lot of vet clinics here. And I told him to live with me, and I will try online school. I'll try homeschooling him because he doesn't do that anywhere else except in that school environment. So I found K-12 and applied and met one of the principals, talked to her, explained the whole situation. And she said my son had this almost the same exact kind of history. And he is straight A's. He had a B here, getting straight A's. He's turning in paperwork every day. He's engaged every day on this. And oversight not even be with me. I mean, I'm doing stuff around the house. I'm doing stuff at the shop. He travels with me. He kind of does it, but he is fully independent. I keep sending this still to his old IEP teacher and caseworker, and she's like, I cannot believe this. Right off the bat, I mean, math, everything. He's doing stuff already in 4th, 5th grade stuff. His reading has improved dramatically. He still has some IEP, but we have IEP meetings and really he's not utilizing any of the IEP stuff. So his records is about as thick as the Yellow Pages, if you guys remember those. It's thicker than that of everything that has happened in his school districts. From this whole year, again, like I said, straight A's. It's unbelievable what this program has done. We are financially able to put him in other schools. I have an older daughter too that's lived with me too. I have her in a private Christian academy school, but with his records, I can't get him in. And there are also most private schools, they are a no tolerance policy. You act up once, they just kick you out. We tried multiple public schools, but this is still a public school setting. We are working with gearing him to learn in class behavioral, having him age out a little bit and mature. And I'm hoping with that, he's showing a lot more promise. Like I said, again, his academics, I even told the principal immediately, I'm not worried about his academics. He's a smart kid. It's getting him to be able to learn a classroom environment. But we ran out of options. I mean, with him acting out and not being able to do this. So this program, I mean, can't speak, this is for everyone's case, but for my case, this is amazing. I mean, night and day from a kid never been in a classroom more than 10 days in his whole school, all the way to third grade, to straight A's every day. He's participating and getting these things done is unbelievable. So that's kind of my short end testimony of, how this funding should still be going on with this program, because it is statewide. And I know we're just a blip in it, but I don't know what else more. There's a lot more to it, but if there's more to be said, I can, but I was trying to keep it down to 3 minutes.
No, we appreciate you coming down and sharing your story. Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
All right. All right, that is the end of our public comment. I wanted to make sure that I mentioned, we have received public comment via email as well. And so that is in the record. And we will recess until 12:45 without objection. Thank you. All right, 12:45. Good afternoon. We will consider ourselves duly reconvened from our morning public comment process and the recess that we took at roughly 10:15 a.m. until 12:45. We did have 4 public comments this morning. One from Brennix Wilson relative to Tennessee Virtual Academy, Casey Wilson related to Tennessee Virtual Academy, Luke Malstadt with SASA USA regarding school accountability and safety, and Mr. John Dowdy relative to Tennessee Virtual Academy. I want to start off by, again, thanking our staff for pulling this process together. This is the culmination of roughly 3 years worth of work, talking with consultants, stakeholders, LEAs, and advocacy organizations to make sure that this accountability process was constructive, informative, and serving the purpose that the legislature bestowed upon the State Board of Education. This body was appointed, this committee was appointed by the State Board of Education as a subcommittee of the board. We will conduct these hearings and ultimately make our recommendations on these school districts back to the State Board of Education, which will then vote and make its recommendation going forward to the Tennessee Department of Education. Today's process will include these hearings, which for larger districts like the first one that we have will be 75 minutes. For the other districts, those will be 60 minutes. I want to start off by just stating our intention for today. We all have an immense responsibility to make sure that Tennessee's 1 million students are receiving the best education that can be afforded to them. The legislature has afforded a significant amount of resources to LEAs across the state to make sure that students' needs are met and that those resources get to the point that they achieve the outcomes that we all desire for our students. And so these conversations that we're having starting today are not meant to be punitive in nature, not a gotcha conversation, but it's more of us having a conversation about how do we get these schools off the list that they're on and on an upward trajectory, ensuring that the students are being successful and served well. We're all a part of this educational ecosystem, from the legislature to the state board, to the Department of Education, to the LEAs, school leaders, teachers, students, and parents. And so as we have these conversations today, but most importantly, when we leave here this week, we should all be focused on student achievement. None of the conversations are about you or about us. It's about those 1 million students. So we want to keep that at the forefront and make sure that we stay focused on that outcome as a goal. And so we have before us this morning or this afternoon, Metro Nashville Public Schools. You have 6 schools that are on record: Antioch Middle, Cane Ridge High School, Chadwell Elementary, Donaldson Middle, Glenview Elementary, and Paragon Mills Elementary. Those 6 schools represent roughly 4,692 students. We want to make sure we keep that as the focus, those students. So, welcome, Dr. Battle and team. We appreciate you being here. Our first question for you is that your district is called today on behalf of its underperforming schools to begin, and in 5 minutes, please tell us what you believe are the challenges and root causes of those challenges for the schools, as well as how the district has responded to their underperformance.
Well, good afternoon. to Chairman Cobbins, to Board Member Eby, and to Board Member Maxwell. We appreciate you all having a conversation with us today with regards to National Public Schools and the schools that you have already mentioned. I want to just briefly introduce who I have with me. We have our board chair, Frida Player, who is joining us today. We have our chief of academics and schools, Renita Perry, and also our chief financial officer, Jorge Robles, who are joining and will be a part of this conversation. When we think about where we are as a district and relative to these specific 6 schools, one, we are really encouraged by the progress that has been made. Our LEA has approximately 95.5% of our schools that are not represented here today. And so we are talking about the roughly 4,000 students that you mentioned who represent about 5.5% of our schools. We fully recognize the urgency of the outcomes in these 6 schools. It's a responsibility that we take on very seriously, which is why we've been moving with a sense of urgency in moving all of our schools in a positive direction. These results are not where we expect, and we have a continuous improvement mindset in National Public Schools, which is know where you are, but don't stay there. We're committed every day to digging into how our students are performing, how we can support them and ensure that they're growing and achieving at high levels. So we take full responsibility for improving them, and you see represented in this room today the collaborative spirit by which we approach that work. This is a us for us, from our school board to our support hub or central office to our school leadership teams. As we're thinking about the work happening in these schools, I think it's important to ground us in our work in continuing to refine the work that is before us. We are clear that we have identified research-based strategies that we're leveraging across all of our schools. And quite frankly, what's represented in our data of which schools are represented and which ones are not is that when we have a high level of fidelity to implementing those research-based strategies, student outcomes do improve. And again, I think that's represented by the large portfolio of schools that we do represent and our commitment to continue to move forward. We've identified a set of coherent strategies that we're leveraging in our school district. We know that leadership matters. We know that leadership matters both at the principal level. We also know it matters in every seat and responsibility within our school district. And so we've identified this coherent set of strategies that we know, if working in tandem, will continue to improve outcomes for our students. And so where we see an opportunity for acceleration is through leadership, through effective teaching and learning on a daily basis, and of course, the highest level of supports for all of our students. Again, these are core strategies driving our district. As was mentioned, we are very cognizant and deliberate, very strategic, in fact, around how we leverage all of our funding sources to strengthen Tier 1 instruction. That is an area of focus for us as a district. We are highly focused on providing targeted intervention for our students, building leadership capacity at every level, and implementing with a high level of fidelity. And so again, where we are progress monitoring and we are urgently progress monitoring, we are seeing results for all of our students. With respect to the 6 schools that are represented, we've already been able to realize significant progress in all of these schools. So if we go back to the improvements from 24-25, they're on the right path. And so we want to continue to, again, move with a sense of urgency by way of continuing to realize both growth and achievement for our students. I mean, we have a reward school that is represented in these 6 schools that is representative of the progress that they're making. We also know that we want the highest impactful, effective educators in front of all of our students. And so our teacher training and our through line is something that we have seen opportunity for continued refinement and improvement. So we are leveraging teacher practice as a central lever to positive outcomes for our students. We are increasing coaching in both ELA and math in all of our schools. And we've gone as deep as implementing real-time coaching for our educators. So we're, historically, you kind of wait to the end of a lesson and then you come back together and you talk about it. We're trying to make sure we're maximizing every instructional opportunity by providing real-time coaching to our educators. In fact, we were in 2 different schools this morning, and we were practicing this as a core strategy for all of our schools. We're also focusing on strengthening PLCs. We know that we are home to very high quality and effective educators, and so their ability to plan and engage in unit internalization, having at-bats, we want them to continue to learn from one another, and also leveraging the acceleration we're seeing in schools all across our district. We also know that we have a very diverse group of learners in Nashville Public Schools. And so we're leveraging both our research-based strategies, all of our leaders in our schools by way of our funding mechanisms to ensure that we are diversifying our ways in which we're meeting the specific needs of all of our students, as well as increase planning time. We are a district to high dosage tutoring. So while we have already adopted high quality instructional materials, and our goal is to implement them with a high level of integrity, we are also aligning that with high dosage tutoring, with gold standard practices where students are receiving that intervention through our MTSS model, our multi-tiered system of support model, on a daily basis, so that it is real-time intervention and responsiveness to our students. And we also know, I mentioned that leadership matters, and I've had an opportunity to share some of the work with this board previously about our leadership training that we are providing in Nashville Public Schools. And, represented here are just concrete examples. We're not just talking about it. We have written it down. We have created a playbook, and we are providing high levels of support and accountability to all of our leaders for implementing that leadership playbook every day. That includes being highly visible in schools. That includes leveraging instructional leadership teams. That includes instructional planning. That includes continuous improvement cycles in every school every day. And so while we are acknowledging that we serve a very diverse group of learners, we're also, again, digging into research, making adjustments where we need to, and progress monitoring on a daily basis to ensure that all of our schools are on a path towards success. We have a plethora of data right now that is suggesting that. I've got all of my amazing and effective leaders who are here with me today who can also attest to this. So this is not a new conversation. We're talking about this every day. We're digging in, and myself and my team are with our school principals and leaders almost on a daily basis to provide the necessary supports that we need. And we're very grateful to our school board who continuously create the space and the conditions for us to be focused on the main things, and that is the students that you've just described, a little over 4,000 students represented in these schools that we're responsible for educating every day.
Thank you, Dr. Battle. Just one quick follow-up question as it relates to root causes. So are there consistent issues or challenges or themes relative to these 6 specific schools that have them in this particular challenging situation?
Yes, and I'll speak specifically to the root causes, which are pretty grounded in research, right? Again, I'm going to start with leadership matters. We have realized, and we've seen through evaluation of our systems, that when we have high quality leaders in all of our schools, that is a pathway towards ensuring that the capacity is needed is represented in every school. And so each one of these schools has fairly new leadership, individuals who are committed to understanding their school community and the teaching strategies that are going to be necessary to support them. Root cause with regards to quality of the delivery of instruction as well. So we have most recently, through the last few cycles, adopted high-quality instructional materials. We are holding ourselves highly responsible and accountable for implementing those materials on a daily basis. So kind of a root cause there. When not represented in planning and instructional delivery, you do see a disconnect in student outcomes. So we're digging in there. We are a very diverse learning community. And so our educators have an enormous responsibility, one that we are very proud of and passionate about, to meet every student where they are. And so when you think about that diversity that is represented in all of our classrooms, we continue to adapt and adjust as needed to meet every student where they are. Each one of these schools are in areas within our city that's growing and changing rapidly. And so again, getting to that individualization, the personalization that is required. We are committing, again, time, talent, and resources to make sure that we're connecting with students in those various ways. And so when I think about that, there is no blame on our young people. We are charged with being responsible to meeting their needs, but that diversity is represented across every one of these schools.
So it's our understanding that the TISA funding formula sets out amounts and allocation for each district with differentials for everything from fast population growth rates to poverty and special needs, and that these specific categories don't bind the expenditures at the local level. Under the district's student-based budgeting model, are the budgeting processes the same for all schools?
All right. Is it okay if I allow my
Absolutely.
Chief of Chief Financial Officer Jorge Robles respond, and then I will follow up accordingly.
Am I on? Yes. Thank you for your question. So the process that we follow, which is a process that has been in place for the last 10 years. So we have a student-based budget formula. It's a very strong process that essentially is anchored on schools leveraging the data that they have, the theory of action, the goals that they're set out to actually pursue for improvement, and then they proceed to actually allocate the resources that are provided to them through the formula to achieve their outcomes. The formula that we use, much like in TISA, there's a base weight, and then there are weights that are essentially designed to provide differentiation for the unique learning needs of the kids that each school supports. So a school that has a higher percentage of a certain population will get more funding to support that particular population and those students' needs. So it follows a similar approach to what TISA does, and that allows us to actually be focus on providing the right resources for the students that school is serving in the way that the formula is distributing those resources. And then the process allows for strong discussion, examination of where they're at, where they need to be, work with the school leader, their supervisor, the departments, the subject matter experts in support hub or central office, that allows to provide feedback to that school leader on how the resources are allocated and are they setting them up for success on meeting the outcomes that they're looking to do.
So at the school level, how involved is that school leader in determining the allocations of those different amounts that the school's receiving?
They're driving the process. So they're very much leading that effort and the decision-making on allocating those resources. There is a minimum set of requirements that they have to meet every school, right? Certain amount of resources that have to be provided to essentially things like teachers to student ratios. We need every school to make sure that they are putting in place the right resources to do that. But it's the school leader who is actually on the driver's seat to allocate those resources in their budgeting process.
And I'll add, just by way of the student-based budgeting process, it is our belief that when it comes to the funding and investment for our students, it is best allocated and managed in that way at the school level. So the teachers, families, the leaders who are supporting the students have insight and are really leading how those funds are distributed. So our student-based budgeting process requires all of our stakeholders to be a part of that planning.
Okay, on that note, I think 3 of the school principals have really short tenures as principals. And so with them being the drivers at the school level of that process, how do you make sure that they have the training, support to make those
Absolutely.
decisions and present those?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So the majority of, and I believe all 3 of the principles that you're referencing all came through our preparation pipeline. And so we have a really robust leadership preparation pipeline in Nashville Public Schools where we train our leaders before they're even sitting in the seat. Most of them have probably experienced the student-based budgeting process as an educator, a leader from the various seats that they've led in within the district. So we start that training very early on. And then we don't leave them there. If a new leader is selected to lead in our schools, we offer then a new principal support program, which is led by Chief Perry and her team. And so we have specific sessions with our new leaders around the budgeting process so that they understand not only the formula, but again, the research, the data, how to dig into it through a continuous improvement cycle, and how they can leverage their investments to meet the needs of their leaders. But we don't just think about what's new or different. We also have to really interrogate the things that are working well and how we can continue to invest and multiply the investments in those areas. And then for all of our leaders, we have ongoing training, conversations with them around how to build strong student-based budgeting that reflects the uniqueness of our students that we are serving. And then they're not walking alone. All of our principals are assigned a principal coach who coaches them throughout the year. They're the ones on a daily basis conducting walkthroughs and digging into the data alongside them and the budgeting process. But we don't leave them by themselves. Our support hub wraps their arms around them, and we have representatives with very specific expertise in different areas based upon this school community, supporting them through the budgeting process itself before it is ultimately approved. And again, we have a requirement that all of our stakeholders are a part of the budget building process.
Have you found it necessary to go beyond the student-based formula to support these particular schools that are in need of improvement? Is there a special, if you will, allocation to help facilitate implementation of different strategies to help them excel?
Yeah, that's a great question. The majority of the 6 schools that we're referencing today, 4 of the 6 of them are not in any other category, so they don't receive any other state grants, if you will. But the answer to your question is still yes. We prioritize both our investments, our time and resources, where the greatest needs are, quite frankly. And so there are opportunities where if we're progress monitoring and we see that we're not progressing in the way that we need to, and a lot of times we've done a lot of that proactively, there are additional opportunities for resource allotment to, again, address the needs that are there. We try to be very targeted and specific. That typically only happens in one cycle because the next year we probably built it in, knowing that is a strong strategy that we want continuity of supports and services in our schools.
I have a couple of questions. This question's for the board chair. So what specific steps have you taken for the board to drill down into the performance of these schools and then the funding decisions on where those funds are going to go?
Thank you for the question. The board, we are very diligent about, with our director's report, receiving the information and the data and reviewing it and responding to it. Actually, we're finishing up our director's evaluation that we do every quarter to make sure we go through the specifics and the details of setting the expectations high of what we expect for our students, what we expect of the school leadership, and then also the district leadership. And then we also review the data, see where it's going, see how movement has changed. And we have seen that over the past years, that we have reduced over half of the schools that are in this condition to where we are now. And it's my hope and prayer that this will be the last time we'll be in front of you. But so that's one of the things that we really do. I am proud of our board, of our makeup of our board, particularly with the expertise. Actually, the chair of our director's evaluation specializes in education research and data. So she's really make data-based data decisions on how do we transform these schools? Where is the data showing? Is the movement done quickly, efficiently, and it's a steady progress, but efficient progress. And then with the funding, it's one of the things that when I came upon board, I was budget and finance chair for 4 years, is we changed how we advocate for education, that is not become this tension of, well, schools are fully funded, are we getting all the resources we need, but how do we advocate in a positive way, but also in an urgent way of really getting the resources back down to the school level with it. So we transform our process of what are the strategy it takes, how much do those strategies cost, and how do we advocate them first on the state level, then again on the local level, and advocate whether it's with the state legislature about with the transformation of moving from the BEP program to the TISA formula, what it works, what doesn't work for us, and how we can fine tune it. But then also with the mayor and Metro Council office of how do you supply additional resources to really support those schools, and that we can be very focused and putting extra resources in where it's needed.
So I'm a former local board chair, and I know you have only one employee,
Yes.
and that is your superintendent, your director. What are you specifically asking the director on what she is doing to get these 6 schools? I look at, I don't know how many total schools you have in Nashville. You know, I think you're a level 5 district or something like that. So you're obviously doing it well some places. So what are you specifically asking your director about how you can get these 6 schools up?
First, we ask what resources are needed that we can support you to create the conditions to get what you need. I think that's something that's crucial as a one employee, is that she has the specific resources, whether it's financial, whether it's support, whether it's us setting the culture and tone within the district, but also in the community of how to support the school. We ask very specific questions of data. How are you holding the principal accountable? What does that process look like? What's working through that process? What's not working? And how can that be fine-tuned to really hold the school leadership to the highest accountable aspect? And if refinements or improvements need to be made, we support that decision. I am proud of this board that we do not micromanage, as some boards tend to do, particularly with school leadership and intervening in that process. We are very particular that that is the board leadership and the district's leadership's role, and we're here to support it. And if we find that that accountability is not held, and then we hold her accountable. But it's one of the things that we are ready, and we have made tough decisions. And then we're going to say, as Chairman Cobbins said, it's about the students and it's not about the adults. And we stand by supporting the students. And if leadership changes have to be made, we support those changes.
Thank you.
So, sorry. Dr. Battle, you talked a lot about leadership and leadership matters. Can you tell us a little bit more about how leader decisions are made? I know you have a good number of new principals for these 6 schools, but you also have a few who have 3, 4, 12 years as school principals. How are they evaluated? How are the decisions made relative to performance and in this particular regard?
I will kick off and I'll let Chief Perry chime in. So I'll start first around the hiring process. In Nashville Public Schools, we have a multi-tiered approach to the selection of our school leaders. It starts with us getting feedback from the school community. We ask our teachers, we ask our families and community leaders where they're seeing an opportunity for improvement, what are the successes of the schools to really help us build a profile of the leader that is needed in order to move things forward within the district. All of our leaders go through a community-based interview process. So we have a collaborative approach. It's usually somewhere between 12 and 15 leaders that represent that community who interview every leader before they go in. And then there's a next level of interview with myself and the team. I'll just be very frank. There's probably not a responsibility I have that's greater than selecting the leaders of our schools. And to answer your question, we have over 130 schools under our direct LEA supervision in Nashville. And I take that responsibility very seriously. As a previous principal myself, I understand, and as a classroom teacher. So that's our selection process, very robust. It is evaluated every year. We have a partnership through peer with Vanderbilt University. They help us really evaluate their process to make sure that it's pretty concise and deliberate in the ways in which we're making those selections. In fact, again, these schools are not represented here, but we do have additional criteria by which the type of experience that is needed to serve in our schools who have the greatest need. It's my philosophy. That's not a training ground for new leadership, but it is a space where we need experienced leaders who have a track record of being able to move schools in the right direction. Again, those schools aren't represented in this conversation, but that is a different level of responsibility that we take on. With regards to the second piece, I'm going to let Chief Perry chime in, and then I'll follow up if needed.
Thank you for this opportunity. We do a really great job of wrapping around all of our principles. You've heard Dr. Battle allude to our leadership playbook and the plays that we hold our principals responsible for, including the professional learning that goes alongside that. In addition, we have done a crosswalk between that and the team evaluation, and each of our principals is assigned an executive director or a principal coach. That principal coach works with them specifically around their instructional practice or their theory of action that they are trying to solve for. In that, as we are working with them, if we see that there are some gaps, then we intervene quickly. And then what we do is we support them, we bring in additional resources and professional learning for those principals, executive directors, so that we can strengthen their instructional leadership capacity as they continue to lead their schools. In the event that they are not making adequate progress, then we will intervene and we will do what we need to do which is best for the school. At the end of the day, we are here to serve children, and we are here to do what is best, which includes finding the best leader, but also wrapping around our leaders that we have, providing them the necessary supports, and then moving them forward.
So it sounds like you have district-wide a pretty broad program for leadership development. Specifically in these 6 schools, what are you doing to support those leaders or to make the changes if they need to be made?
So I'm going to start off really quickly. So we do have the menu of supports that we have for our schools. So for example, for some of our new principals, we have principal success coaches. And so this is in addition to our executive director or principal supervisor. That principal success coach comes in, mentors, provides insights to them, questions, probes them, and it really is a nice layer to the executive director that we have in our schools. They are able to walk alongside them, coach them, like I said before, and move the school forward as they are continuing to build their instructional chops, their leadership capacity, and leadership expertise in our schools.
So let me.
So, I
I'll
understand. Okay, I understand what you're doing
Mhm.
broadly. What I want to know is
Yeah.
these 6
Yeah.
schools.
So I'll jump in
Yes.
here because I'm going to take us back at the beginning of the school year over the summer. We already could see the data and where our schools were. So we made a lot of adjustments early on. So what comes with that is smaller networks of ratio of supervisor to principals so that we have more intensive supports. These principals also receive additional operational capacity so that they can focus on the instructional supports in schools. They also received additional supports with regards to their leadership coaching. They received additional teacher support training. They receive additional planning supports for their educators, but also specific supports for their students. And so it is intensified. If you think about the multi-tier system of support, it's laid out just like that. This is broadly what is expected and what every principal receives. And based upon student needs and the data, we intensify those supports all the way through the top of our pyramid, if you will. And so it gets closer to one-on-one in every situation where there is a greater need. This is also where my team and I spend the majority of our time. So with a large portfolio of schools, it's impossible for us to be in every school every day, but we are in schools every day. And the schools that are represented here, we refer to them as our impact schools because we have impact strategies that they're leveraging. They see us more frequently. So as an example, when we go into schools, it's not just the superintendent. We're taking the representatives from our entire support hub so that they can get real-time support while we're on their campus or in their building, right? And we don't have time to translate things, and so we're there to support in that way. So we are intervening and providing intensive supports based upon the makeup of the school.
How do you assess then if you're making progress? I mean, we take tests once a year or something like that. We don't want to wait a year before we find out if we're making progress. So how are you assessing in real time?
I'm very confident that my team that's sitting here today can tell you today exactly what their data points look like. So we have a pretty robust system internally that is more of the formative assessment. TCAP is more of kind of the summative at the end of the year. So we administer benchmark assessments multiple times throughout the school year for us to have a check-in around how students are progressing and what instructional moves or shifts we need to make. We have an internal dashboard where we're daily monitoring all of our non-academic and our academic data points. It actually updates every night. So that's why I'm confident that every leader that you see before you today knows exactly where we are. So those benchmarks help us really track growth and achievement for our students, specifically to ELA and to math.
And one last follow-up question for the board chair, then how do you follow those assessments? How often are you getting those reports on how those schools are doing?
Several times a year. It's actually built into our agenda calendar that definitely in the fall, definitely early or winter, I guess to say. And then again, after assessments that we look through, we get a report from Dr. Battle and her team about how the assessments are going. We even dig down to the subgroups of students and their performance, and we see where the improvement's happening. If it's not happening, we will spend time, as I kind of jokingly say, we nerd out on data on the board floor, and we go and we ask those questions about those subgroups. Why is it moving? What supports are needed? Going back to Chairman Cobbin's question was, what's the root cause that this hasn't moved or this has moved, and compare comparable schools. Each of our school members really have a good sense of what's going on to their schools, and we take a good look at the whole school. So if we know there was a school of a similar characteristic that has improved, we ask, well, why it helped in this school and not that school, and see it. Is it a nuance question, or is it a bigger kind of systemic question? And so we have those conversations on the board floor about the differential of what's moving, what's not. But we do several assessments with our chief data person, and we go through, and oftentimes that's actually some of our longest meetings, believe it or not, is going through that data and asking different questions. Our vice chair is a consultant doing turnaround schools, so she has her expertise, and we have a former teacher on the board. So we see it from different levels. We see it from the actual classroom level with those of my colleagues who are actual former teachers, those who do the data research. They do it from a more empirical situation than our vice chair, who's also been a school turnaround specialist, looks at it from a cultural and instructional part. And then the rest of us kind of look at it from a community aspect of, if I'm just a layperson coming into this conversation, what do I see? What do I hear as those questions? And then those who come from even the private sector and looking at it from a data point, a strategic point, what are the overall parts? So that's one thing I'm really proud of the board of. When we hold our director of schools accountable, it's a very 360 approach of how the different aspects do and how we all bring our specialties together as a whole unit to make sure we're looking at all the possible resources, strategies, interventions to make sure it's happened in a full, thorough way.
Thank you. Just one question, and really, I think we're at sort of the midpoint of this conversation, and I think we have to have some granular conversation as well, particularly as it relates to Glenview Elementary. You have a leader who's long tenured as a principal and long tenured at that school, but we've seen this slide occur. And so I'd like to understand, how are you balancing performance evaluation in that context? And what do we need to do specifically at Glenview to get them moving forward?
Yes, I believe what was reflected in your document is that all 6 schools have or will have new leadership. And so we believe strongly in high levels of support in Nashville Public Schools. It's our responsibility to build leadership capacity. We believe it's our responsibility to empower and equip leaders at every level. And so it's important for us to coach and support as to the greatest extent possible. But as was mentioned in our pre-work and documents, we have and will have new leadership in all 6 schools, including Glenview.
So I'd like to talk more about impact strategies specifically for the 6 schools. In your pre-hearing form responses, you described several instructional strategies employed at your schools and noted that you're having a success rate of 96% district-wide, which is kudos to everyone involved. But what about these 6 schools? What specific strategies that are being incorporated district-wide are being incorporated here, and or what needs to be done differently with these 6 schools to have the results that we all desire?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for that. So where do I begin here? What is at the disposal for these 6 schools that we're discussing today are 10, we identified 10 impact strategies. What is unique about these strategies are that, again, they're really research data driven. We have several partnerships where we have external partners who are evaluating our research-based strategies in the district, and we can point to how these specific strategies are improving certain student groups, right? Or numbers of students. And so that is the intentionality by which we approach the impact strategies. Each one of these schools, each one of these 6 schools has a different combination. And that's important because we want the strategies that they're selecting to reflect the needs of the students being served. What's also critical about that, and Board Chair Frida Player mentioned this, is that we were able to also look at other models in schools within our portfolio where this combination of strategies really worked. They're getting it at a much intensified rate. So when you think about our accelerating scholars, and we use the word that we expanded accelerating scholars. Accelerating scholars is our high dosage tutoring program. And for the entire district, we use somewhat of a ratio, right? Because the funding wise, we don't have a 1-to-1, so we're just trying to meet the needs of our students. Where in these specific schools, they have an opportunity for 1-to-1 tutoring for their students. So that's what we mean by intensifying the strategies that are there. We mentioned the success coaches, right? So we have the principal supervisors supervisor, but they also have this coach on the side that's also providing real-time feedback to the principal along with the district portfolio of supports. Same thing for our educators. While our general population of schools has an opportunity for real-time coaching, these schools have it almost in a one-on-one basis so that as many educators as possible can receive that support as they're planning and moving into their instructional delivery. The key shift that we're making moving forward is starting earlier, right? So this is a fairly new accountability system. We have several of them and they all kind of culminate and need in different ways. And so this is fairly new. So we've been monitoring, we've been working with the State Department, State Board, our own team, just digging into how you land with regards to letter grades with the new accountability system. We've got that under our belt now. And so we have built internal systems that actually help us predict much earlier where students, where school letter grades will land so that we can back that up to the budgeting cycle and actually use that runway of preparation so that we can start these interventions much sooner and much earlier than we have in at least over the last year or two. So we're well positioned for that now. Again, we don't believe in just verbalizing that. We have really codified that as a part of our playbooks within our systems so that there's coherence and clarity across a district of our size. This is not just Dr. Battle as the superintendent saying this. We're all in alignment to our teaching and learning team, to our student support team, to our chief financial officers team. So as we're supporting schools in the budgeting process and their continuous improvement process, we're asking, just like y'all are doing, we're asking similar questions. And we're pushing on the same outcomes so that we can have this combination of supports that we know will yield positive results for all of our students.
Thank you. And also just to follow up with that, with these impact strategies and the levels that you've implemented, what has the district continuing to do to take some things off the plates of those school leaders so that they can focus more intensely on the academics in the school, especially tier 1 instruction? I'd be curious to hear about that.
Yes, great question. Y'all have been digging into this. I love this because it's you all understand the role of our educators, and I greatly appreciate that. So a few things. You've heard us already reference our central office as a support hub. That is one fundamental shift that we've made as an organization. My team and I, or anyone that's considered a district level, we're in service to our schools, to our leaders, to our teachers, and our students and families. And so fundamentally, we've been in this shift of transitioning from a central office to a support hub. Again, it's us. If one of my schools is not where it needs to be, that's my responsibility as well. So that's one fundamental shift, and we've been delivering lots of professional learning around what it's going to take for us to be a support hub so that everyone understands what our one responsibility is as a district, and that is to impact positive outcomes for our students. That's the first thing. The second thing with regards to that, and I'm losing my train of thought, is around prioritization of operational needs. So we have now paired our principal supervisors with another leader who takes all things operational off the plate of that principal supervisor and that principal so that they can focus intently on tier 1 instruction. We're not going to intervene our way to success. This is about fundamentally making sure that the foundation is strong for all of our students and that every student has access to the high quality learning experiences that they need and deserve. And the third thing I'll say, and my team is here with me, so they'll hold me accountable. So y'all will be able to look at their faces and tell me if this is true or not. But we spend time every year talking with our principals. I ask them, what is working? What is not working? And where can we continue to accelerate? So that's a conversation that they plan for, and they look forward to that conversation so that we can take things off the plate where we need to. We can shore up things that might be on the right path, but there might be some barrier to their access or success, and or it gives me the information I need to work closely with our school board around the resources needed in order for us to get there. And we could name a number of kind of innovations recommendations that have come out of that conversation that my school principals, my school leaders, and my classroom leaders they constantly tell me that it's a game changer in their ability to focus on the planning and the delivery at a high level that they need to truly, again, increase the proficiency of our students.
Just one question. To what degree are you utilizing differentiated pay to ensure the teachers can be incentivized to go into some of the toughest situations?
We have a few models of that. Chief Ferry, would you like to speak to our most intense models, and then we can move forward?
So in two of our schools where we are receiving additional funds, we actually have an incentive pay for recruitment and retention in our most needed areas, so our core content areas, as well as our EE and EL classrooms as well. So those teachers, we have a recruitment incentive, and then we have a retention incentive for our teachers who are our highest performing LOE of LOE of 4 or 5, as well as if they have 50% of their students who are showing growth as well. So we have those retention and recruitment incentives for those schools that are receiving some additional funding from the state.
And if I could, and Chief Robles, if you want to chime in here, that is starting from a really strong base. So about 4 years ago, our school board, our mayor and council did a really deep dive pay analysis for our educators, which allowed us over a 4-year period invest heavily in our educator pay. We've been able to tout that we have some of the most competitive educator pay across the state of Tennessee. And that didn't just happen. That took these conversations we're having about retention first, but also recruitment of our educators so that they could continue to live in the communities, serve the communities that needed them the most. And so that's something that we're really, really proud of. We realize that for all of our classroom educators, but all of our support staff, our principals and district leaders as well. So that is on top of being really thoughtful and mindful of the core across all of our schools, and then how we can intensify that and differentiate that in our greatest need areas.
And if I can jump in for a moment, that was one of our proudest moments as a board to reevaluate our pay scale, and that the fact that we've been stepping COLAs to, ever since 2019 when I've been on the board, to show that we really want to invest financially. But also, there's also the culture of it. And one thing I'm proud of our board is that we truly professionalize the board to bring a positive culture, and we do it as collectively as a board, but also individually. That we go and we create that atmosphere of culture of, we're not your boss, Dr. Battle is, but we will bring the community to support you and show that you want it, you're valued. So if it's even something as simple as bringing coffee and donuts and saying, hey, we see you, but also what can we do to bring support, community support, whether it's alumni associations or neighborhood associations, to tell the teachers and the principals of, hey, we are supporting you as we do the financial incentives, but there's also a cultural incentive that everything, pay doesn't solve all the problems, it helps, but also show that you're wanted and valued, and that your skills and talents are needed in these schools that need the extra attention and love, and the community is going to provide that and back you up with that also.
So just one follow-up on that is transiency and retention an issue amongst these 3 schools for teachers?
It has been historically in the past. We are seeing the retention rates increase specifically at these schools, 6 schools that we're talking about today, but also all across the district. So it has been something that we've had to address in the past, sometimes for good, sometimes for not, when it comes to how transient of an educator workforce we've had in these respective schools. But we are on track for really good, positive retention, meaning educators who are, again, significantly improving outcomes for students, having continuity in their respective schools.
Drilling back in on some of the data, as I look at Glenville Elementary School, first I look at your chronic absenteeism rate is about half of what it is, say, at some of the other schools. So what are you doing right there? Your retention rate, teacher retention rate, is as well or better than any other schools? What are you doing right there that you can take to the other schools? And then why, if you have that great chronic absenteeism and that great retention, are your school scores still an F?
Yeah, it's a great question. The one thing I'm really confident on is that my principal leaders and principal coaches have had these conversations. This is why we put them in networks so that they can learn from one another in these spaces. Chronic absenteeism, district-wide, we've seen a positive reduction in chronic absenteeism. We have some schools who have moved faster at that than others. And so what we know is that where we have leveraged our attendance procedures really strongly, again, high level of fidelity, integrity around that, we're seeing that kind of acceleration. Again, we're evaluating all this so we can see where that's happening. So that's an example there. We also know, again, with curriculum, when implemented with a high level of integrity, then we're seeing those student outcomes translate. So when you have a disconnect between chronic absenteeism and student outcomes, you kind of know where to go because students are coming to school, right? So now it's about the conditions that are in place. It's around the supports, right? And the level of preparation, and then holding ourselves accountable that we see it all the way through. So we're monitoring that, but I think we can pull that kind of individual school data because of the systems we have in place. When we see that, it helps us get right to where we have an opportunity for acceleration and progress. And believe you me, we're asking the same questions.
Just generally speaking, as it relates to these, the district-wide and relative to these schools, what has the TISA funding afforded you to be able to address that you might not have been able to address prior to? So with these additional resources that really get to the student needs, what are you able to do now that you weren't able to do previously?
Chief Robles, would you like to kick off?
I can start. I'm glad you asked that. So TISA funding represents about 18% of the funding that the school district leverages. So a lot of the effort has been, as we referenced before, leveraging our student-based budgeting, so make sure that the resources are allocated to serve the students. But it's been an effort on, working with our board, with the city of Nashville to make sure that we have been able to sustain the funding at the local level, especially after the ESSER dollars went away, so that we could actually continue to direct the critical investments that we know have been making a difference on the students. So the TISA funds contribute to our ability to essentially sustain those resources in a small portion. But it does not sort of an area of opportunity that, if I might call, it does not, unlike the priority schools, that there is specific funding allocated to actually move a school from a place to another place. TISA does not essentially provide for that opportunity where it's targeted to actually accelerate the progress of that school. So we've done that essentially by braiding funds, TISA, as well as local funds, to make sure that we sustain the critical investments and push that, those resources, continue to sustain them for the schools and make them available.
Yeah, I think that is an opportunity. Thank you for surfacing that, Chief Robles. But again, while that's an opportunity, we have been really digging into the braided fund model to help us support our schools that are represented in this conversation, because there's not a dedicated weight or pot of funds to support these set of schools. And so just going back to the point that Chair Eby made earlier, like we have realized 4 years of level 5 growth. We right now have the highest proficiency that we've seen as a school district. We're at the highest graduation rates that we've seen. And at the same time, while we're moving things forward, we've got to be really intentional that as the bar is raising, that everybody is raising. Because if you are right at the bar, now we have schools that are like surpassing performance. And so through this braided funding model, it's allowing us to be more intentional and more intensive in supports, but not necessarily just because that pot of funds is weighted and set aside to support schools that can benefit from additional acceleration.
Two of the 6 schools that you brought here were priority schools in 2024 and 2025. What interventions did you choose for those, and how are those interventions being helping the school? Or what results are you seeing?
Yep. Give me 1 second. One of the schools is leveraging the expanded accelerating scholars, so the intervention there for them with high dosage tutoring. They have identified power planning days, because what we're seeing there was just going deep around the unit internalization, understanding the sequence of learning as opposed to just a daily module that students were engaging with. They have increased instructional collaboration aligned with the school's approved theory of action to accelerate progress, i.e. their school improvement plan as well. They have increased specialized coaching visits for both ELA and math. They have we've added additional expertise, particularly around their EL population, their English learner population. We were seeing a gap from their progress and the overall student group. So we intentionally assigned new expert coaching there. And they've also added real-time teacher coaching. So they have their teachers side by side with leaders who are in the moment, right? Like we're not finishing this lesson without it being ending where we need to and where student learning needs to be. So that's the research-based impact strategies that they're using. We have seen increases almost across the board in their overall proficiency leading up to this point. And today, they're on track to meet or exceed their goals. So, of course, we all want that to translate here in a couple weeks, but from the progress monitoring we have, they're on track to meet those goals right now. In the second school that was mentioned, they have leveraged a very similar package. So, but these two schools are in the same cluster, and so they've been learning together and sharing. We can see kind of the progression that students are making from middle school to high school. We've also picked the brains of their elementary principals, where they tend to do well in the early grades. They as well have leveraged expanding accelerating scholars. They've increased their instructional collaboration, again, increased coach visits in ELA. They've added new expert EL coaching. They've increased we have another intensive team that's working closely with them across all their content areas, and they've also implemented real-time coaching. If you were looking at their data, they're on track as well. They've been, over the last few years, been making progress in their tested categories. And as of today, they are on track as well to meet or exceed their goals. So again, we have both historical data that we can point to, but also this is real time as of today data that we can see, again, non-academic and academic.
Following up with the interventions and the high dosage tutoring, who are the people that are delivering these interventions in these 6 schools?
So we have a combination. We have a combination of our own teacher workforce who is working with our students, but we also have external partners who are either in person or virtually working with our students. And it all kind of depends on where the student is and what they need on their pairing. So we've expanded so that we have as much capacity as possible in both our own educators. We also have a number of retired educators who we don't want to let go. And I'm glad they don't want to let go. So they're pushing into our schools as well. But we're also offering, again, in-person and virtual tutoring. I think the thing that we're really proud of that makes this gold standard, that in frequency, meaning that at least 3 times for 30 minutes a day or 2 days or 45 minutes during the school day. So we're not leaving it up to chance. Students may also receive tutoring outside of the school day because we offer a robust summer program in our district. We also have a weekend enrichment program that we offer alongside our what we call our Accelerating Scholars Program. And so the guarantee for us is that we're not leaving it up to chance. Students are receiving that high dosage tutoring throughout their academic day.
Question. With regard to these 6 schools and then more macro district-wide, what is the state of students with special needs and exceptionalities, and how do we make sure that they achieve?
Yeah, we're actually really proud of our exceptional education team and the work that they're doing. They were actually just recognized nationally a couple weeks ago because of their intentional focus, one, around educating our students in the least restrictive environment that is important to us. We have a district mantra, which is every student known. We're committed to knowing every single one of our students, meeting them where they are, making sure that they're supported and valued in every way. Each one of our schools, but more specifically, the 6 schools we're talking about today, they have e-coaches. We call them exceptional education coaches that help them with their mapping of supports and services to their students. They help them with the progress monitoring. They help them intervene where necessary. And as you all would imagine, the family connection and engagement in the planning process is critical. We require that all of our students have transition plans. All right, that's just not for our exceptional education students, for all of our students. And so we lean on those collaborative teams coming together to progress monitor, to set goals. We have seen in our data, both in proficiency and growth and in graduation data, our exceptional education students continue to improve year after year. And in some ways, they're outpacing growth for our all student group category. So significant progress with our exceptional education population. We have not arrived yet. This is still a journey. We're still about continuous improvement because we want to realize every one of our students and every positive data point that we have. But we do have early indications and data that suggest that we're on the right track.
And to add on to that, that has been a priority of the board, particularly in recent years. We have seen it's something we want to bring more attention to and more focus on. And that's something that we have been talking through all school year, this academic school year, is really how to really focus that, particularly the growth and success that we've had all across our schools. Now we're drilling down to those populations of where do we need that extra support, where we need the extra resources and the advocacy. And the exceptional students have been one of those, of how do you make sure that they excel is one of the things that I think we're also proud of. It's also been a focus of members of Metro Council. And so we see that working lockstep as a coalition of how do we do this as a community, not just in the education, but how does council also help us to do as education and also for them to transition into adulthood. But that's one of the things that we as leaders, particularly elected leaders, have been focused on, and making sure that our exceptional children have the priorities and the focus that they need. And how do we do that as an overall community that's just not a, to be frank, a trendy moment in time, that is a continuous growth and a continuous spectrum that we have that will be a longer journey.
Yeah, and I think we could speak to that across all of our student groups. And we're seeing progress in each of them. We're trying to speed it up. We're trying to multiply that every year, but all of our student groups are growing. And, Chair Player is very humble in this regard, but specifically to our exceptional education population, my team at the Support Hub, our school board members and parents and advocates all across the city, particularly around our exceptional education students with disabilities population, we meet frequently to have conversations, to dig into the data, to learn from our families, to learn from experts who are studying in the field to help really drive our strategic planning moving forward. And so we don't claim to believe that we're at it alone, nor can we do it alone. And so we carve out time, and our school board members are always there, a part of that conversation as we come together as a community to, again, realize this really big goal that's achievable that we have for our young people.
All right. Well, thank you for your answers. We are now at the portion of our agenda and hearing where we will discuss and make our recommendations. Colleagues?
Well, I'll say this, I'm very impressed by how much the board is engaged and how well you understand what's going on within the district. And that obviously shows a great relationship between the board chair and the board and the director. So that was very impressive to me. That being said, you got 6 schools that are failing, and we didn't ask the question. And at some point in time, I'd like to find out is how many are there other F schools that didn't have Fs 2 years in a row or Ds going to an F? And so, I think if we look at us, if we look at students, again, those 4,260 students or whatever it is, what is it that we can do to assure that they're getting the best quality education that they can get? And, I think the efforts that are being put forth by Metro Nashville are moving things in the right direction, but we have to assure that you're continuing to move in those directions and you get those things moved up. So,
I would reiterate what Mr. Eby has said. Also, I would like to say that I love the phrase that you began, know where you are, but don't stay there. It's obvious by the practices that you've implemented and you plan to implement that you are acting intentionally with urgency. Again, we have to look out for all the students, which I think based upon what you've said to us, you are, and I do think you're on the right track. And I appreciate the attention to detail, because in the classroom is really where the rubber meets the road. And it appears that your impact strategies, you are aiming towards that goal, because that's where the magic happens. And so I applaud you for supporting your leaders in the schools, because they're the lifeblood of the school. You've heard the old adage, if the principal catches a cold, the whole school catches a cold. And so I hope to see you continue those impact strategies to help your leaders to take as much off of their plate so that they can be in those classrooms and really focusing on the instruction, grade level instruction, intervention, as well as when an expectation is not met. They have the tools to know how to intervene, who to refer to, so that corrective action can be taken, so that the educator has support, but in turn, the students are successful.
Echo my colleagues' sentiments. Appreciate you all bringing your team here to talk to us about your vision, your direction, and how you make sure that the values get to the classroom level and ultimately achieve the student outcomes that you wish. That number is 4,692 for the 24-25 school year, and that's our focus. So looking forward, the school leader development is something that I would like to see paid close attention to, knowing that, as you stated, these 6 schools will all have new leadership, and making sure that those school leaders are equipped with the resources and the supports that they need is something that I think we really, really have to get right. The retention and recruitment strategies with the pay and the incentives, making sure that we get high quality teachers to deliver high quality instruction is something that I think we have to pay close attention to as well. And then those interventions that you mentioned for the 2 priority schools, those things jump out at me as just sort of key areas of focus that we need to pay close attention to as we go forward in achieving what we need to get these schools off this list. So, yes, sir.
I think another thing I would look at is I continue to look at the root cause. In other words, I think your strategies across the district are very good, you know. But these are 6 schools that something is obviously happening in those 6 schools that aren't happening across the district. Or maybe I should say there's other things you're doing across the district that aren't being effectively done in those 6 schools. So I would really think you ought to focus on what are the root causes in those schools. And I don't think they're the same in each school, you know. So you need to identify what is the specific action we need to take in that school to get it off the F. And so, again, I think across the district, you're doing the right thing, but we need to look specifically at each one of those schools. What can we do to bring those up?
Okay. Is there a recommendation, action?
Yeah, I think an action plan is required.
So we have 2 routes at our disposal. One is to recommend a corrective action plan or take no action. In subsequent hearings, they may be able to request a fiscal audit, but that does not appear to be warranted in this case. And so, again, as we stated, the process is not punitive. A corrective action plan is simply probably taking all your other plans and rolling those into more codified conversation with the Department of Education to look at these areas that we've pointed out and see where we can make improvements over the next short period of time. So that is the will of the body, that Metro Nashville Public Schools enter into a corrective action plan with the State Department of Education. Without objection, so ordered. Thank you all. We appreciate your time. Yeah. That will be brought before the State Board of Education. That'll be the recommendation to the State Board of Education at the May meeting. Right, 2:15. Good afternoon. We are hereby convened for State Board of Education accountability hearings for Hardeman County Schools. Schools represented for discussion today are Bolivar Middle School and Whiteville Elementary School, which total combined 400 students for this conversation today. The reason and purpose for today's hearing is the Tennessee State Legislature, through its TISA legislation, bestowed upon the State Board of Education the responsibility of holding accountability hearings for schools that have underperformed. And the State Board of Education has appointed myself, our Chair Bob Eby, and Dr. Ina Maxwell as a subcommittee of the board to hold these hearings and ultimately bring recommendations to the board at our May 2026 board meeting. And ultimately, that board will vote and make its recommendation to the State Department of Education. I want to establish our goals and intention for today. This is not a punitive conversation. This is not a personal conversation. It is meant to be constructive and transparent so that we can ensure we have a thorough conversation, one, about the challenges that exist that place these schools on the list, but most importantly, how we get them off the list and the efforts that are being undertaken to make that happen. So we look forward to a fruitful conversation today. We're all part of the same ecosystem in Tennessee, from the legislature to the state board, to the department, to the LEAs, as well as the school leaders, teachers, students, and parents. So as we go forward from today, we want to make sure that we keep that student focus at the forefront, and they're all counting on us as the adults to get it right. So we appreciate your presence here today, and we'll allow you to introduce your, Ms. Smith, allow you to introduce your team that you brought with you.
Good afternoon. The team I brought with me today is Mr. Bobby Henderson, who is the chairman of the board. This is Mr. James Rutherford, executive assistant of teaching and learning department, and Ms. Lisa Hicks, who is the assistant director of finance.
If you can restate
Do I
that
need to
with
do
your
that again?
microphone.
Sorry. This is Mr. Bobby Henderson, chairman of the Board of Education, Mr. James Rutherford, assistant director of teaching and learning department, and Ms. Lisa Higgs, director of finance.
Thank you. So our first question for you, and if you could answer in 5 minutes or less, is your district is called today on behalf of its underperforming schools. To begin, please tell us what you believe are the challenges and root causes of those challenges for the schools, as well as how the district has responded to their underperformance.
One of the concerns that our schools have, is particularly these two schools, is basically hard to staff areas. Personnel, finding certified teachers is difficult in itself. We are a rural distressed county, and we use that as an opportunity, not a challenge, but at the end of the day, it's also a reality of what we deal with. Whiteville Elementary is about 30 or 40 minutes from the Shelby County line. Their pay is significantly more than what we can pay in Hardeman County. A lot of times we get teachers in June and July. They're gone. Can't do a lot about it. And then here we are trying to figure out what we're going to do in the next couple of weeks to open school. So we've had a lot of transiency at Whiteville, particularly in the summers and right before school starts. And at Bolivar Middle, we've also had a lot of turnover in terms of retirements and people leaving the district in general. So personnel is one of our greatest concerns in terms of stability and transiency. Those things matter to the culture of the school because it can affect it one way or the other each year. So that's something that we're working on in terms of the stability piece of it. And then building capacity. If you're having 50% turnover, it's difficult to build sustained capacity with professional development year after year. Another area that we're working on is instruction in general. We have made a lot of progress as a system, and that's shown in data. But these schools are making some improvement. They're not making it at the level that others in the district or the state are. So that's a concern, is how do we accelerate this instructional piece for them? Differentiated instruction, assessment, and capacity in general are our three keys that we're focusing on right now and in the future. Been trying to build that, but again, it goes back to personnel. When you're having sustainability and transiency issues, it's hard to build capacity. That's probably our two areas that we're focusing on the most, or that we feel like has gotten us here. The instructional coaching at both of these schools has turned a little bit in the last couple of years. So getting that piece right is very important, because they're the ones that are in those classrooms every day helping support teachers, who in turn support the students. Does anyone have anything to add?
All right. In the pre-hearing form, you were asked to describe how the LEA uses funds to support recruitment and retention within the failing schools, and your responses stated recruitment strategies are implemented uniformly and do not vary based on school performance designation. Your response goes on to say staffing at the two designated schools remains a persistent challenge, as you just mentioned. Given these staffing challenges, what strategies is the district considering to ensure the stability in the schools that need it the most?
We are going to have to use hard to staff funding in isolated pockets, particularly in the high schools, but we're going to have to look at this as a school-wide initiative, because these schools themselves have become hard to staff. It's no longer just a 7th grade ELA compartmentalized issue. It's a school-wide issue. So we are definitely looking at some type of recruiting bonus or stipend toward, if you make it through the end of the school year, we're going to have to pay those teachers an X amount of dollars. The other piece to that is performance bonuses. We have that in place through our differentiated pay plan, but it doesn't seem to have the teeth that it needs in terms of what it can do, but it all comes back to that capacity building too. Making sure we can have that sustainability with those teachers and build the capacity that they need. But we are definitely looking at differentiating our staffing funds for these particular schools in the next school year.
So I'm hearing you, I think, say that you're looking at more of using that differentiated pay for the retention of teachers, or more in creative ways, not just based upon a certain score that they might receive.
Well, we're looking at diff pay to provide the performance-based pays on your levels, but then we're looking at TISA funds to provide each teacher specifically an extra amount of dollars over the rest of the district in terms, not salary, but a recruiting basically bonus, but it's not going to be paid till the end of the year. So you're going to get that, and then you have the opportunity for the performance bonus. So it's kind of two-pronged.
Have you also, have you thought about reaching out to other districts to see how they are using that differentiated pay to recruit and retain those hard to staff areas? Tell me what you all have done there, or maybe even other states for that matter.
Looked at an E-plan a lot to look at diff pay plans, because we had teacher leaders and then data leaders in ours, and that wasn't gaining us the benefits that we felt it should.
We changed ours this year.
So we've changed it this year to a data piece. Not really satisfied with the way that's gone either. So we're looking at something with the hard to staff instead of the performance based. Most of the districts around us do the performance-based pay. It's based on TBOS composite levels. So we have that in our place now, but looking at increasing that to something that's more attractive, I guess, to teachers.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up a little bit on that. So I was the board chair in Oak Ridge, and we were on the positive end of being able to take teachers from Anderson County and Roane County. So I know exactly the challenge that you have against Shelby County. So maybe this is for the board chair. What are you doing with the county commission to recognize the issue that you have with regard to being able to retain staff, whether it's teachers, but I presume it's probably administrators and everything else you're having competition with. What are you doing with the county commission to recognize that? And is there any efforts going forward associated with that?
At the present time, no, as far as this particular issue, we have not discussed it. We continue to have ongoing conversation with the county commissioners over their share of funding of our formula. As you may know, as being chairman, that's a very difficult uphill battle a lot of times. You always get the feedback from them that they're doing everything they can and they're doing above and beyond what they can do. And it's not always the case. In this particular issue, to answer your question, we have not actually reached out to them at this point to maybe seek funds or seek additional funds for doing something like this.
I would strongly recommend from a community involvement standpoint, and what's important for your county, obviously, is an educated workforce and educating your students. And so I think this is something that you might be able to do, at least let them be aware of the situation, and maybe they can help out too. I don't know, but at least make them aware of it. Don't keep it amongst yourselves. So,
Okay, thank you.
I did have a question too. Your pre-hearing form introduced a bit of laundry list of instructional strategies for the schools. And so if I go back to page 9 on your page here, you have a whole list of implement research-based instructional strategies and provide walkthroughs and ongoing professional development, et cetera. How effective are those with regard to your school system, and what are the results that you're seeing out of that?
We completed this template as a district as a whole, but we have identified several in here that particularly are challenges at those two schools. And really the first three, the formative assessment, summative assessment, and differentiated instruction. Without that differentiated instruction, if you look at the academic data, you'll see that one school tends to teach more to this group and one school tends to teach more to that group. The differentiated instruction is where that comes into play. With the transiency of staff we have, once you get curriculum training in place and starting the differentiated instruction through PLCs and those types of things, then they leave and you start the cycle over. So it becomes a challenge in getting to that level of professional development with differentiated instruction, because that is something it's difficult. You have to work your way up through that. And then making sure that our assessments are aligned. We have the alignment piece. For the most part, where we're struggling is the disaggregation of the alignment assessment piece to utilize that to drive the next set of instruction. Instructional coaching, as I mentioned before, to me is very critical, because that's the person that is expert in the building in terms of instruction. I know principals are instructional leaders, but that's their sole job. And we've really seen that work very well in some of our other schools. So that's a piece, making sure that they have deliberate, intentional, focused goals and conversations with teachers. So we have a laundry list here, but those are probably the 4 that we've identified these schools really, really need to focus on for high impact change.
So you talk about these assessments, and you have several assessment lists. Are those primarily student assessments, and what are you doing with regard to teacher assessments?
For the formative, we use a lot of the iReady, ELS, those types of things. Teacher assessments, we've done assessment alignments where they take questions from their assessment. Coach may go in and say, let me see your last assessment. They'll pick it, then they go and align it to standards to see if it's standards aligned, and then to see if it's aligned with what they've taught in terms of lesson plans or through observed walkthroughs. Just making sure that we are assessing what we're teaching, and then it's to the level of rigor within that. Those are 2 of the things that we've got a couple of schools that are doing that very, very well, and it's showing the change. We've done some training with assessment alignment, but that's an area that these 2 schools really, really need to focus on next.
Okay, so going back a little bit to the differentiated pay, but I need to ask this question first. Does your system operate under the 1981 Fiscal Management Act, or Are you under that?
We are not centralized.
Okay.
Okay.
So going back to the retention and recruitment, what do you think you could do as a district to retain those teachers that you know, bring in, you train, like you said, to maintain that continuity? Besides a bonus at the end of the year, is there anything that you're thinking of throughout the year to do to help incentivize that?
I wouldn't say there's a thing we were looking at, but it comes back to culture. And if employees have a good culture, they're more likely to stay. And we have some culture building to do, especially with leadership at these schools, to make it a place where people want to work and want to stay. That's something you can't put monetary values on, but it is probably our number one starting point, is revitalizing and revamping the culture of these two buildings.
Just a general question. So it dovetails on what you just said and also what Chairman Eby had mentioned a question or two ago, just in terms of the partnership opportunities. And so is there within Hardeman County, whether it's the chamber or civic organizations that are highlighting what's great about living, working, teaching in Hardeman County that you could tap into to offer, in addition to your financial incentives and other things, that this is where you want to live, work, and be of service through education? Is there anything that could be done or anything that's currently happening in that regard?
The chamber does a lot of help with us in terms of just some things that are going, community events, bringing community and schools together. And it may be that this event is community, but it's at the school, et cetera, things like that. Again, when you're in a rural distressed county, those are some of the real challenges. We're the second largest employer in the county. So it really creates challenges, not just that the resources aren't there, but sometimes the level of availability to get those types of things done and then out becomes a challenge.
Just a question, just in terms of school leader accountability and evaluation. We know with one of your schools, you changed leadership. The other school, that leader has been in place 6 or so years. And we've had 2 years of F letter grade. So what's the balance there in terms of how you make those decisions? And
well,
leadership?
last year and this year, both of those schools have been on leader action plans.
Okay.
Monitoring those and looking at the ability to move forward in terms of, okay, this is something, taking ownership of, I want this to be better, is something that we're really observing and looking at to see, is that willingness and that want to make this a better situation there, or are we stagnant in the ways we've been looking at things for many years? So we're looking at those mainly through action plans, because those are things where the principal and I and their teams and our team sit down about once every month or 2 months and have conversations step by step. Here was the action, here's the step, what's the result, and let's revitalize our next actions. So we've been doing that for about 1.5 years, starting to see some things, overall picture come out of that. But making that autonomy box a little bit smaller. We all know principals like autonomy, and sometimes they need that for ownership purposes. But there comes a point where this has to be done, and this is the step we're going to take to get there, particularly with things, sometimes it's personnel, because both of these schools lag in hiring techniques and practices. That's something that HR this year is going to come in early, and we're going to help make some decisions to get staff in there that we feel like will stay and be there through the summer.
How many total schools do you have in your district?
9.
9. And of the other 7, have you looked to see what's going well there versus what's not going well here? And does it get back to the leadership, you think, or?
A lot of it's culture and leadership.
Okay. How many years have you been district?
I just finished my fourth.
Fourth year. Okay. From a board chair's position, how do you hold your district superintendent director responsible for achievement?
We, as other school boards, we evaluate our director every year. Once we do that direct evaluation, it's usually led, it's not internal, it's actually data that we use through TSBA. Once we evaluate the director of schools, the director of schools usually will ask each one of us as board members to come in one-on-one, speak to them, ask them about what concerns you have, whether they rated high or rated low. You know, she seeks the guidance and tries to find out what direction their answers are actually coming in, not just take the answers at face value, because sometimes there's an underlying issue going on why they gave an answer, or maybe they just didn't understand, you know, the question, or they didn't have enough data to back up their answer. So it's a good feedback for them talking to the director of school. So it's a good open door relationship there.
Has the board taken any specific action with regard to these two schools and conversations with your director, or?
No, everything's been on the early stages, of course, with the schools being out with snow and all that. We've been kind of behind, and I'm not exactly sure when they got this information. I believe it was somewhere around December or January. But we have not actually addressed it right now. We're really still trying to digest it as a board, as the central office is.
Yeah. One of the schools you had an F last year too, so you've had an F 2 years in a row, and one was a D going to an F, so.
Yes, and like Dr. Smith said, you know, we have actually taken upon ourselves to go ahead and have put some action into place to do these things. She's been updating us, that every board member, on these changes, how they're coming out. Some are actually working, some are not. Some are not working as fast as we would like for them to. But yeah, there's definitely some, we're proactive on a lot of these decisions we're making right now.
To follow up on something that you said earlier, with the leader action plans that you have, the two principals on, you mentioned that some of the decision-making was being done at the school level with the hiring and things like that, and y'all are going to take a more collective approach this coming year. So as far as like the spending, the budgetary funds at each school, are those principals responsible for all of that spending? Or do they have to have approval from you? Or do you say you have X amount of dollars and show me your spending plan? Or is it a collaborative process?
It's collaborative in the sense that we call them sync meetings, where we talk about personnel needs. And I'm going to talk about personnel, and then she can answer some other things. When it comes to personnel, we have identified like a 1 to 18 student teacher ratio that wants to be that's our goal. We look at needs. We have them come in and we look at our numbers, then we look at needs. They can go through, request things. We've had a decrease in enrollment over the last few years, so we've tried to get that. We try to stay aligned with personnel needs, but we do have those conversations, allow them to bring needs. I need this support person, et cetera, or this would be helpful. And we look at that from, I guess, the standpoint of equity with other schools and need, and try to balance those two. As you know, that can be difficult sometimes, but we do have those principals in and have conversations about personnel needs in terms of funding. Do you want to add anything to?
Above and beyond the personnel needs, we do give them annual allocations far and above the $200 per teacher. And for the most part, our principals are allowed autonomy with how to spend those funds. Now, we give them a set of guidelines. If there's any questions, they will usually call Dr. Smith or myself or my accounting supervisor to ask, but they are given autonomy.
Okay, so with that autonomy regarding interventions that these two schools, I'm assuming, have implemented, Is there a checks and balance system to see if the interventions are working, if they've purchased an intervention versus purchasing people to implement interventions? How do you all make sure that there's fidelity in what these two schools are doing to bring students up, to raise their scores?
Specifically the intervention, I'm gonna let Mr. Rutherford.
The district actually is responsible for purchasing the intervention programs for each school to use, but the schools, as Ms. Higgs has said, they do have autonomy. We do require that the intervention that the school purchases be vetted through the teaching and learning department as far as make sure it's research-based. And then we do follow up as far as what intervention program they're using. We have the interventionist, we have interventionist meetings. We try to have those once every month, but sometimes that doesn't work out quite like that. We also have the coaches meeting, plus also my team, we're in the buildings as well, monitoring the fidelity of the intervention. But the schools do have some autonomy as far as purchasing intervention programs above and beyond what the district has said, this is the intervention program that we're going to be using. And a lot of that is also based on the need, as far as for the intervention program. Is it lower grades? Is it phonics? Is it comprehension? Just making sure that there's not one intervention program that fits all. So that's kind of how we take the intervention approach.
And also, do these two schools in particular that we're looking at today, do they chart or present records to you to show student improvement, or if there's regression, and explain what's being done to help those students?
Yes, ma'am. They keep up with the tier log, the tier 1, 2, and 3 log. And then at certain times, we call that in. But if they ever have any type of referral, we ask for all that documentation as well. But they do keep up with that on a monthly basis. So.
Smith, can you provide for us just some description about the student populations at each of these schools?
The student populations of these schools, there are about 80% African American, 20% Caucasian. Whiteville has a 19% special ed population, and that was up tremendously from the year prior to that. Bolivar Middles has fluctuated pretty significantly over the past 5 years. Last year it was down, it's risen some. So special populations is an area where we're trying to add more support. Just this school year, we've added more support at both of those schools specific to those populations to try to keep them in inclusion in those classrooms and more support for those particular areas. Parental involvement is a challenge because Whiteville's very rural, so getting those parents to come there is difficult. And then it's more difficult in general. It's not an excuse. It's just people are busy now, and trying to get them there, especially in a true middle school, and getting them involved. So parental involvement is not a demographic of the students, but it's a demographic of the stakeholder situation with those students. Whiteville, that's a K-8 school, so they have been in that school always. Bolivar Middle comes from a feeder school, which is a K-5 school. So not that demographic plays a role, but it is the transition for Bolivar Middle is a factor, particularly in 6th grade.
And what about the free and reduced lunch?
We are a CUP district for lunches, so we don't necessarily follow that information. I'm not even sure we follow that, do we?
What?
The free and reduced because of CUP.
Where's CUP?
But as far
They're not required
to qualify to be a distressed county, it's going to be extremely high.
Okay. So, so when you have a myriad of challenges and hurdles, you have to have a myriad of strategies. So we get that part. But based on where things are with these particular schools, what 1, 2, or 3 chips are you putting down saying we think these steps will point them in the right direction and hopefully get them off the list?
Intentional planning and goals is going to be number one with leadership. If they're not centered on owning the responsibility to move forward and to make the difficult decisions that it's going to take to get us where we need to go. That's number one to me, is making sure that intentionality is there with the goal setting. Some of the other things we're doing, we've talked about the recruiting and retention bonuses for staffing because that is one of the things, but just building culture and professional development capacity in general, whether it be in differentiated instruction or whether it be in behavior management. Behavior management is one of the areas that we have to focus on a lot as well at these particular schools. So just making sure they have the support people in place and it's the right support people in place. That those coaches are instructional coaches that understand the challenges specific to those grades. One of the examples of the interventions we use is Saxon Phonics. We have seen tremendous success in all of our schools with that. So making sure that it's being done with fidelity at Whiteville Elementary would be a key. Things that we've looked for, that we've kind of made sure these need to be on the top of our list for next year. And then collaboration. Collaboration not just within the staff, but also with other schools, because at both of these schools, for the most part, these teachers are the only teacher that teach that grade and subject. So having someone to be a peer collaborator with them is important to making sure that they have that person to bounce things off of and to ask for help and support. And then, of course, I mentioned behavior modification. We're looking at several things to help make sure we start the year right with clear expectations and we work toward being consistent and staying within the expectations of behavior.
Yes, sir.
I noticed at Whiteville on your growth of your highest need students that you got a level 4 on that. So you're obviously doing something well there. What are you doing with those students that you're not doing with the other students?
I think a lot of it is just those intentional intervention pieces, such as Saxon, making sure that they are in the inclusion rooms as much as possible. We have been fortunate to have some very qualified and experienced special ed teachers in our ranks in the last 2 to 3 years, really. So I attribute a lot to stability and just making sure that we have those resources in place.
And change the questioning. Hardeman County, now are they getting the benefit of Blue Oval or AI activities? It's not, okay.
We're the second largest employer.
All right. I didn't know if.
A lot of talk, a lot of work we did with that 3 or 4 years ago, and it just went quiet, stagnant.
Well, I know that Ford has backed off because of the electric vehicle, but I think they just recently said that they are recommitting to Western Tennessee. I think I don't know if they're going back to the gas or whatever it is, but I thought I saw they were making a recommitment, so that might be an opportunity for you to approach them and again, to see if there's opportunities there for workforce development or partnerships or whatever. So
workforce development is an area that I feel like we have really done a lot of great work in. And that's been one of our focuses, is the Future Ready piece we've been working on for 3 or 4 years. Our high school numbers with college and career readiness, industry certifications, dual enrollment, they're great.
Middle college.
Absolutely great. So getting that focus from that it's a K-12 journey,
right,
I guess is
you
kind
got
of
to
the
get them,
message
got to
we
get them
try.
through the elementary school,
Right.
Yes.
prepared to go into the high school, and that's the challenge that you have. So. Go ahead.
Talk to me about what the instructional day looks like at these 2 schools. Are there parameters in place to protect the instructional time? Are there, distractions or disruptions during the day that might hinder, bell-to-bell instruction? What does it look like at these 2 schools?
I can tell you that is on almost the first action step on both of their action plans, is to protect bell-to-bell instruction. We have cut down on some programs to make sure they're done in extended school day or done at night, things like that. Field trips, you have certain windows that those need to be done in. Day to day, we try to minimize the interruptions, the announcements, things like that, make sure it happens. It's, of course, it's in a school, it's whatever happens that day too. But that is a step on their action plan, and one of the things that we have explained the value of those minutes being protected.
Have they been able to produce any evidence so far that implementation of that first step on their action plan is proving to be advantageous to the students? Any data?
At this time, no.
So, so far from this conversation, my observation is that culture transformation is a priority for you. And of course, that starts with the board, the superintendent, and flows from there. And business scientist Peter Drucker said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So culture and values, and culture is what you do every day, not necessarily what you say. And so it sounds like from a leadership standpoint, at these particular schools, there are some question marks. And ultimately, as the leader, you have to determine if you have the right folks on the bus or not. And so understanding your staffing challenges and those types of decisions probably represent, and I'm interpreting just sort of seismic shifts in terms of making changes and finding talent to come in and replace them. I guess at what point do you have to ensure that the rubber meets the road? And I'm not saying you have to give me a point in time, but just knowing that that possibility may need to exist at some point. What's your outlook on that?
A lot of it is leadership and ownership, and that comes from the heart.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to determine, do they have the stamina, the will, the desire to take this situation and this challenge, turn it into an opportunity and move forward.
Mm-hmm.
If that doesn't exist, then we have a greater challenge, as you said, that any strategy can solve. Because at the end of the day, they create the culture that those parents want to send their kids to, that the kids want to come into, and that teachers want to work in. So just knowing, is your heart set in this? Are you demonstrating the will to make the changes needed to have an impact?
Got one. Did you talk much at all about high dosage tutoring in terms of the
What
schools?
is your question on that, sir? I'm
Does it
sorry.
exist
Yes.
in these schools?
Yes,
And
it
in
does.
what manner?
We do the high dosage, low ratio tutoring that's required for our fourth graders. So we do that. We also try to have that in our extended school day, the 1 to 3. But a lot of times in these schools, it's hard to find someone to staff it. So we do the best we can on that. We do meet the letter of the law on that as far as the 1 to 3 and the required grades. The others, we try to keep it as low as possible. But once again, it's hard. We cannot guarantee it in every building on that.
So to follow up on that, when you are able to provide that, who is staffing that? Do you have?
Certified teachers.
And have you looked at extended contracts for some of your retired teachers who are highly effective, utilizing that in areas of greatest need? Is that something on
we
your
can look
radar?
at. Yes, we can.
On that same vein, are there any colleges or universities or two-year colleges or universities near or around Hardeman County?
There are not. The closest one is about 40 minutes. We do offer middle college. It doesn't help us with our teacher situation, but at least it's getting some of our students farther down the road. We have offered middle college for this will be our 3rd year. So that partnership with Jackson State is there, working through teacher programs to try to get some of those kids more involved in the TAP programs and things like that. We have met with UT Martin because they have centers on each side of the county, and with Jackson State multiple times, trying to see if there's different things we can do. We do have some good relationships with some universities in the area that we'll get student teachers from every once in a while. Sometimes they stay, but for the most part, we do not have any colleges in our county.
Yes, sir.
Oh, no. What would you say is the one most important action you can take right now to help solve your issue?
Making sure that the leadership and all leadership from the board supports myself, teaching and learning has the supports in place, and that school leaders have a common goal, a common vision, and the desire to have high impact strategies to get us to where we want to be.
So as it relates to high dosage tutoring, the reason I asked the question about the colleges and universities is that there are some successful partnerships that exist in other communities that involve college students that are willing to be paid to tutor students in schools. I mean, we can put you in touch with those organizations, but I think that could be a potential solution to the staffing part of ensuring that you can get people into the schools to help support and undergird the teachers and the instruction and meeting the students where they are. So
If you could send that information, we'd greatly appreciate it.
happy to. Thank you.
We are also planning to increase our hourly pay rate for all of our extended school day employees.
Also, I'm curious, there's several nonprofit and obviously for-profit organizations that work with school districts. I'm not probably at liberty to name those, but I'm thinking of some where they come in with board approval. They work with the instructional support at the central office, and they go out into the schools and work with, the teacher leaders from those schools, as well as the principal, go into classrooms, monitor what's going on, give productive feedback to help bring people together for that common goal. Have you had access to any of those opportunities, or is that a possibility?
I'm not gonna say it's nonprofit, but
Well,
last year we did use a turnaround consultant at both schools. Did not quite see the impact that we wanted to out of that, but I think a lot of that was being taken as recommendation and conversation rather than this is a strategy we really need to look at implementation of. So we didn't see a lot of great success with that, but we have also, right now we're working through the new literacy grant and through some other teaching and learning instructional practices we put in place, working with 2 other consulting groups to help, particularly with the leadership piece. Their focus is on the leadership.
Are there any partnerships with entities like Teach for America or those types of organizations?
No, sir.
Do they not come to you for conversation or?
No, sir.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just thinking about, you say it in your final statement here, with Hardeman County being designated as a distressed county, you view the designation as an opportunity for focused improvement rather than a deficit. And I'm not saying it's this simple, but to some degree, some people are drawn to a challenge. And to the extent that you can tap into those entities that are igniting that passion, that energy to make a difference. I mean, urban school districts have been doing it. And I'm not saying that rural hadn't, but it sounds like an opportunity for rural to make a case and make that part of the narrative that, you know, you can come to Hardeman County, make a difference, get your experience, get some training and development. And that could potentially, and I'm not trying to tell you how to do your job, but I'm just thinking out loud that that might be an avenue to sort of turn the challenge into an opportunity and just make sure that that opportunity gets in front of the right passionate people that want to come and make a difference. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I want to follow up on that. So what I've heard today a lot is that you're a rural distressed county that are losing staff to nearby counties. There are other counties across Tennessee that are just like that. Have you spent any time with those counties on how they are solving or addressing the problem?
I have, we have a very close superintendent's group, fortunately, that has a diverse makeup, whether it's rural or urban with it. But a lot of times, a large majority of our teachers come from other counties, a very large majority. Our turnover rate is significantly higher than theirs. And I'm not making excuses, but a lot of times, like the Teach for America, we have nothing to offer people in terms of things to do, things for families to grow with, activities. It's very stagnant. So it's almost like you said, the community piece has to help us move this forward, because we need reasons for those people to come and live in our communities, or at least closer. We're 30 or 40 minutes from any size city. So you can be Jackson, Memphis, several other places, but it's a minimum of 45-minute drive. Today, people like convenience. They like to be 5 minutes from multiple restaurants and shopping and things like that. We don't have any of that to offer. A lot of our population doesn't leave our county lines. A lot of times what we provide our kids and the opportunities we provide them, that's what they get. So it's a real challenge. You know, we say it's not an excuse, but at the same time, it is a reality. So I think people just have different routes sometimes, because some of the counties to our east, once you become a teacher there, they don't leave. They're there for 30 years. Some of the ones to the north and west, they have a lot more transiency as well for some of the same reasons we do, but they're also closer to those metropolitan areas. So it's kind of a weird area to be in geographically, to also be distressed at the same time. And it kind of goes back to, you mentioned Blue Oval. We were hoping to at least get one spinoff company or something. We're 35 minutes from that site. We have not gotten the first thing that I know of.
Did I hear you say you have a Chamber of Commerce or?
We do.
So, are you actively engaged with the chamber?
We are actively engaged. Have multiple times met with the city, particularly the city, trying to get industry in there. They're just not coming. So it is a piece of our challenge. It's just something we know we can't control, and we've got to, as you said, we've got to find those other avenues to tap into.
May I add something to that? A lot of times our community leaders will point the finger back at us. I mean, it's like, we got to have a better education system to get industry or industry into our county. It's always, you need a bigger school. You need a prettier school. They need to see something other than the older school. And it's like, that's the battle we continually seem to fight. It's like pointing the finger at us. And we know as well as anybody else that just because you have a pretty school or a new school, it doesn't translate to grades or a better environment or anything. So it's kind of an uphill battle we face with our local leaders a lot of times, having to deal with this issue versus our school system and community growth and all that.
That's why, going back to our original conversation, I think it's critical that you get this relationship with your local leaders to understand the challenge that you have and bring them into the picture. I mean, develop that culture, that community engagement. I think that's critical that you do this.
Sorry about that.
Good afternoon, Rachel Supay, General Counsel. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Just one follow-up question from the pre-hearing form. The pre-hearing form noted that response to intervention during a review identified that there was inconsistent implementation and limited monitoring of intervention effectiveness. And we were curious if you found that to be the case at both of these two schools. And if so, what has the district done since then in response to the review? And what adjustments have been made at the district level to ensure RTI is being implemented effectively with fidelity?
Like I said, one thing that we're doing is we are more intentional as far as our team at the district office being at those meetings more, being more visible in those buildings at those two schools. Just that intentionality piece of it and making sure that it is being done with fidelity. Because a lot of times, you know, it is that. It's not necessarily that it's their fault or they're doing it on purpose. It's just things happen. And in order to move forward, we're going to have to be more intentional with that and making sure that to eliminate any things that could happen. It goes back to one of those questions about what the typical day looks like. And as far as making sure that, you know, it's bell to bell, it's no no interruptions. And that is one thing that we're doing on that. And a lot of this did start after we received this notification in January. So we really don't have a lot of data to back up as far as how effective it is or what we really need to monitor and change on that at this point.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you all for coming in to answer our questions. We definitely recognize the challenge that's before you. We'll now take just a few minutes to discuss and determine what action we'll recommend. We really have two courses of action that we can recommend based on the statute. And one is recommending a corrective action plan, which is likely the implementation and aggregation of plans that you already have in place, but that would be in concert with the State Department of Education. And the other is no action. And so those are the two routes that we have to deliberate and discuss on. And so colleagues, observations, any further questions? Takeaways? Okay. Yes.
So, I think that the group that's come to present this information to us definitely realizes that there are some deficiencies that need to be remediated, and from leadership like Dr. Smith spoke to, district-wide, particularly at these two schools, leadership support, training. One thing that and it might end up being a question to you all, but it's been referenced several times that this is what we're doing based upon this notification that we received in December. So I'm wondering, what data systems and tracking systems are in place to know that there's issues before you get a notification, like this. Those would be things that I would want to know, and you could put into a plan to say, this is how we're going to correct this, and be sure that we know what's going on before we receive a notification in December.
Yes, I agree with Dr. Maxwell and her comments, and I'd written the same thing down with regard to received this in December or January. Again, this is 2 years of Fs, so you shouldn't wait to receive something in January. I mean, when you see your school is failing, you need to start taking action. I haven't seen where the district is not taking action. I think one of the challenges you have, which was mentioned several times, is it is a rural district, and that rural districts do have different challenges across the state, but there are some rural districts that are doing very well. So I would encourage you to look at that. it appears to me one of the biggest challenges you have is developing the community involvement in the culture. And I think you recognize that. The parental involvement, you talked about that. I think if you can get, and maybe with the help from the board chair and the community, get the community engaged behind the schools, I think that's critical. Is you got to have some kind of engagement of that for the schools to be successful. So particularly these two schools need to have some engagement and commitment from the community to help bring those up, is my thought.
I echo those sentiments. I think that there sounds like there's some opportunity to look at partnerships, understanding that the district has a lot to address. Community partners can help play a role in shouldering some of that load and helping students achieve. And to the chairman's point about local leadership, knowing your funding probably comes directly from, well, most of your funding probably comes from your county commission. That's a great place to start because they have a lot of power, a lot of influence with the chamber and other entities to push them to support the school district in the way that it should be supported. As it relates to leadership and culture, it sounds like there's work to do there and evaluation and monitoring that needs to occur going forward. I think those are things that in our roles, we would want to make sure that are occurring in a way that allows for things to coalesce in a way that the schools and the teachers and the leaders can and the students can achieve and ultimately get off this list. That's really the goal, is to get them off the list. And so I know those involve tough conversations, tough decisions, but that's why we're here. So, and we have 400 students relying on us in these two particular schools. So is there a recommendation?
Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent for a corrective action plan.
All right. That is the recommendation, and without objection is so ordered. I would say to you all that the corrective action plan is not a punitive measure. It's really to place you in concert with the State Department of Education, and that'll be our recommendation to our board. And should they vote to make that affirmative, you would be in concert with the State Department of Education on a number of these matters that we've outlined, and hopefully we can have actions that are codified to get those schools off the list. Thank you for your time. We appreciate you being here today. It's now 3:15, and we will call to order the State Board of Education accountability hearing for Fayette County Public Schools. Our reason and charge of being here today, this committee was put in place by the state legislature as part of the TISA funding. These committee members, that charge was presented to the State Board of Education. These committee members were appointed by the state board as a subcommittee to conduct these hearings. The hearing will be roughly 60 minutes. We'll allow you to have some initial commentary and then we'll ask questions. But I wanted to make sure that we express to you that this process is a constructive conversation. It's not punitive. It's not gotcha. It is a very intentional conversation in terms of transparency and understanding how this particular school ended up on this list and what we all can do to get it off ultimately. And so as a state, we're all a part of a broader ecosystem, from the legislature to the State Department, to the state board, to the LEAs, and to the schools and the school leaders, and ultimately the students and parents. And in this instance, we have roughly 340 students at this school that need us to be laser focused on helping them achieve the best outcomes that they can. So we appreciate you being here today. First, well, let me allow you to introduce you and your staff.
Good afternoon.
First.
My name is Don McPherson, and I have the privilege to be the superintendent or director of Fayette County Schools. We have with us Mr. Speakman, who's our board chair, Ms. Elliott, who is our finance director, Mr. Keel, who's our deputy superintendent, also chief academic officer, and we have Dr. Griffith. She is our new principal at West Junior High.
All right. My first question for you is, your district is called today on behalf of its underperforming schools. To begin, please tell us what you believe are the challenges and root causes of those challenges to the school, as well as how the district has responded to its underperformance.
Well, to start with, I'll tell you a little story, okay? From that standpoint, I think it's good to understand some clarity, some background. I truly felt led to come to this district. I've been here 8 months and 2 days. When I looked at the position, I'm an ordained minister, and I was helping a church in northern Mississippi. And I was in East Tennessee or Southeast Tennessee working in Franklin County Schools. I saw the position, I prayed about it, I applied for it. And the first time I got there, people say, "Have you seen what's going on?" And I'm like, "Yeah, actually I have." And so I truly felt led to come to this district. And so as we hit the ground running, obviously we have a lot of things. We're the only district in the entire state that's under consent order since 1965. The second thing is we're the only district at the time and still now that has a private plaintiff, which is with the Legal Defense Fund, which is the legal arm of the NAACP. So a lot of the things that we do or have dealt with in the past, there are parameters. So that's one issue. Also, two, as you know, these are natural highlights, okay? I've been around for ARA, okay, in the 2008, 2012 range. What's the one thing they said don't do with that funds, federal funds? Hire people, right? But what did a majority of districts do? Hire people. And then, of course, in 2020 with ESSER, what's one of the things they say? Don't hire long-term people. What did a lot of districts do? Hire people. So if you look at our history, back in 1989, we had 4,700, just under 4,700 students. Each year, that number has declined. Last year, we had approximately 2,600 students, and this year we have approximately 2,450. So you see a decline in enrollment. With the transition from BEP to TISA, it has been very detrimental to us. We've lost money from that regards. So, and if it wasn't as we're projected, if it wasn't for the funding floor, we would lose an additional $2 million from the previous year. So right now we're slated for that because we've lost enrollment and revenues. So as we look at that, we've looked at stuff. We got the big picture because I'm not just, yes, we're here for West, but I'm looking at our entire district too. So when we look at this district, we're looking at every single thing in this district. So let you know, last year we were at a $3 million shortfall. They had leftover money and they were able to allot that. We reduced staff last year. We're at a $3.5 million loss of revenue for this year. And that's with level funding. So we're going to make extraordinary decisions and cuts that will affect many people. Okay. But I'm not just looking at just one school, I'm looking at all the schools. So having said that, if we move forward, I know where we're specifically here or there, but I think it was important to see the backstory from that particular standpoint. So we've hit the ground running. We have tried to be proactive. One thing, I hate being reactive. Okay. If I'm going to be anything, I'll be proactive. My 6P success, prior proper preparation prevents poor performance. And so once, and this is before I got here, and thanks to Mr. Keel, who was the interim superintendent before I came aboard, they looked at the data and they saw the things that were happening. And so decisions were made right off the bat. They removed the principal. Okay. We have replaced 2/3 of the staff. We hired a wonderful principal, first-year principal, and we have done our very level best to address her issues, but issues as a whole. Because the first thing I noticed is we didn't have leadership capacity. And so that's the very first thing we did. We've got to build that leadership capacity. So we've started programs like an academy, principals academy, where they work after school. We obviously we can't do with TISA funds money-wise, but we use federal funds to supplement that, and we're actually growing that capacity with them. We've assigned a mentor with Dr. Griffith, who has been through the trenches, not just at one school, but 2 schools, so that she has someone to parallel with, ask questions with. And the other thing is we didn't have an assistant principal for a while. They were on medical leave. So 2 of us and then the other people in the central office, we were assistant principals for the day. So we came in and went in there, and I was sweeping floors, or I'm in the lunchroom, or I'm in classrooms, whatever the case may be. So that's the backstory. Now, but to answer your question is that we have had to change the culture first and foremost. And that's specifically what will be done. And that's where I have spent a great amount of time with Dr. Griffith. Mr. Keel has spent a great amount of time with Dr. Griffith to actually help change that culture, change that viewpoint. Okay. We can't do the same things we've done in the past. What is the old thing? The definition of insanity, do the same thing over again, expect different results. And so we've come in here and made those changes with the administration. We've come in and helped with not only that, but also the teaching aspect. Again, we don't have the TISA funding to use it because we're very, very tough on that, but we're using the federal funds to support teachers, coming in them and helping them learn, helping them grow. And just like you heard from Hardeman, the same thing exists. We're 8 miles away from the Shelby County line. We don't offer, people can make $15,000 to $20,000 more a year to go to across the line. And I understand that. But what we are trying to do is we change that culture. We will keep a good portion of those teachers. And so those are the 2 big things that we have been focused on. One, we made changes up. We are proactive because at the end, I know you're going to make a determination. I would be personally offended if we have a corrective action. Y'all may give us one, okay? But we've been proactive to have that happen, okay? Because it was our intent to make this better. And so the board has given us full, hey, you make it happen. Full support from the board, okay? So and then at the same time, as we move other things, is that I've started trying to build relationships, okay? Not only with schools, not only with community members, but also with the county commission. So each month I go up and I speak to the county commissioners. I got a phone call last night from the county mayor at 9:00 last night. Okay. So we have developed a relationship in order to try to improve that, to show them what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we need money. So that, I know that's a long question. And if they get a kick out of this, because I actually don't talk this much. I do a lot more listening and talking, but you asked the question. But I wanted to give you the backstory as to what we have accomplished to start with. And are we through? By far, no means. I'm embarrassed that we're in this situation. But I'll tell you this, we're going to correct it.
We appreciate that. And I have an ongoing debate with my wife. I enjoy providing context. She doesn't appreciate it that much, though. So-
Amen. Amen, brother. Pass the collection plate.
But we appreciate that. Thanks so much. First question, or second question.
Okay, and if I may, I'd like to follow up with something that how have you changed? What have you done to change the culture there in Fayette County? I'm really curious.
Sure. Well, first off, is that we're teaching bell to bell. Okay. We are setting expectations. Okay. For example, we had a situation just recently where a particular athlete got into a situation. I had tons of people call me and say, "Oh, let them play in the state tournament. Let them play in the state tournament." I said, "Did they break the code of conduct and what level it was?" And I basically supported the decision of the discipline committee. So we're changing the culture. Actions have consequences. So we're going bell to bell. We're putting emphasis on the teaching. Everyone who doesn't love sports. I'm an old coach. Okay, I love sports. Okay, and we all know that kids come to school. They don't come to school for academics, right? We all know that. But at the same time, though, we've got to make those changes. We're looking at, after school with tutoring, not only at West, but other places, okay? Helping those teachers improve because of the pedagogy, so many of our teachers are on permits, right? So they don't come from the pedagogy of education. So we're having to work in with them. What can we do to help you? How do you feel supported? Mentoring them. What can we do to help you grow and be successful? And so those are the top things that we're trying to change the culture, along with giving that support to those principals, helping them along the way. I talk to her at 8 o'clock about every night, okay, because that's about what time I'm coming home, and that's what that time she's coming home. And so I talk to Dr. Griffith probably more than I do any principal because she's had a tough road to hoe, so to speak.
I appreciate your response very much. This is more of a financial question. Does Fayette County operate under the Fiscal Management Act of 1981, or are you centralized?
I'll let Ms. Elliott answer
Okay.
that.
No, we do not. We are, we're not centralized.
Okay, thank you.
Can I do a follow-up to the first? Just how large is your district?
We have approximately 2,450. Last year was 2,600. The year before that, it was 2,900. And you go back to 1989, it's just under 4,700.
But how many schools is that?
We have 7 schools.
7 schools.
We have a career technical education, which is not an attendance center, and we have an alternative reach program, which works with students who are behind, and then obviously discipline. But we have 7 attendance centers.
Thank you.
So you talked about the declining enrollment. To what is that attributed?
Well, how much time do you have? I know we're standing between this and happy hour, right? Okay. But, well, there's several factors, obviously. One, we've had a consent order for several years. So you have a lot of people that have gone to private schools. We have.
Can you explain the consent order?
Sure. In 1965, there was a consent order brought on by participants, private plaintiffs. It was enjoined by the Department of Justice, basically saying that we were not adhering, we were not segregating, and so our whole purpose, we weren't desegregating. So that has been on tap for several years. In 2023, we got partial unitary status, but we still have 2 or 3 factors that we're still working on from that particular point of view. And obviously, we have regular appointments with the Department of Justice as well as from the Legal Defense Fund. So that's the backstory there from that point of view. But now other things, so we have people in private schools. Another thing that's hurt, and it's just life, a lot of the city schools used to charge, that are bordering us, used to charge fees to attend. They have waived those fees. So obviously we lose students from there as well. And I think as of right now, we probably have about 69 homeschool students. that are registered with our district. But that's basically part of it over the years. So a lot of times they'll go to us through a certain time, and then they'll go to somewhere else that maybe have more offerings.
You said it was 4,700 how long ago?
That was in 1989. And so we've slowly dropped each year.
And do you have any impact from Blue Oval? I mean, I would think.
Well, we've made inroads with Blue Oval. Obviously, I've tried to work with Marian Dunovet. She's the education liaison. And so we have been working, talking to her, partnering with her, looking at ways, again, go back to culture. What do we have problems with? Soft skills, right? I've gone out and met with community members. I've met with people that own businesses. What do we need to if you to hire us? Because my 3 E's are when they leave our district, I then want them to be employed, I want them to be enrolled, or I want them to be enlisted, the 3 E's. And so we've gone out and tried to talk to different people. Our board chair has done a wonderful job helping with the community aspects of it. He's been in private practice and in business for years. And so I pull off of these particular, anybody that has an angle, we're going for it. And so we have been talking to Blue Oval. Obviously, you know, as you look, if you know about Blue Oval, they have their circles. And so we're in there, one of the circles, but not the one with the most. But we are working with them on a regular basis and trying to develop programs, obviously, to help our students with those soft skills to prepare them for employment.
And what are some of the activities that the board has been doing with regard to addressing, particularly like the attendance issue, you know, the number of students, et cetera, to try and build that up?
For a rural school with us located where excuse me, I guess I'm Warner Speakman, I'm chairman of the school board. I think that was directed. We had eye contact. Yes, sir. So in that, I also ran a technical company for 30 years. I started my career as an electrician, served an apprenticeship, went back to college, degree, went to TVA, didn't like TVA as a design engineer, went back into trade. 30 years in trade, had 600 employees at one time. You know, iron workers, electricians, electronic technicians, IT people, had a full design service, had architects and engineers on staff. So it was good. We had to teach. We had a classroom in our building. So I retired in 2010, and right after I retired in 2010, we had a federal mandate to build a school. So we built a 900 student school, and unfortunately about the third shovel of dirt that came out of the ground had asbestos in it. They had buried the old school. Good piece of property, but not a good. So I ended up taking that project over and building it out, okay, as a consultant to the school board. From that point, though, I dealt with the federal judge. I had to write a monthly report to the federal judge on the compliance requirement of that building to move and consolidate schools. We built it out. I thought at that point we would be done, complete with, and of course I'm now involved with the schools as a consultant, and I love the schools. So I end up on the school board. I'm appointed by the county commission. I'm the senior guy probably on the board now. I think that's the case. I've been there 7 years. I'm now for 1 year I've been chairman. And going back to the original question, we are in a complete relook at our CTE. The future of our school would be CTE. Okay, so we're doing a lot starting in 7th grade. We want to have a different interest level, a different avenue, a different educational. And so we are reaching out to the community. We have communications with Ford. We have communications with Energy, TVA. A lot of positive things where we're going to start supplying workforce and private-public relationship on education. That's our goal. Now, our goal a year ago as a new board to find a superintendent and to get finance and get our house in order. So our house, we feel now is in order. The board, solid board, consisting of very, very, high quality, sometimes difficult people to manage, but, that's okay. So with that said, I talk too much, so we'll pass on to y'all. Any questions though?
Well, Mr. Speakman, you must have read one of my questions I had on my paper.
Yes, ma'am.
So yes, we noticed that there has been quite a turnover in the directorship in Fayette County. And obviously, Dr. McPherson, you've brought on, is he now your permanent director?
Yes, ma'am. We
Did
had
they
a
give you
little
a
bit
good
of
contract?
I'm gonna
Yes,
tell you.
they did.
Yes, we do.
So what are you doing as board chair and the other board members to support him in his work to move West Junior High School, in the right direction, as well as maintaining all of the other schools in Fayette County?
We start out with leadership out of the board. And then we found a superintendent that met every expectation and also met something that we had. I'm not a super religious guy, but we had some intervention. We had some things happen that made it feel, we knew we had the right person. And that happened to different positions. And you'll see that he's probably getting ready to go through one of the most stringent evaluations from a board because we've got a MBA type engineer that likes to write and qualification, corporate, just not, it's not going to be fluff. Did you go visit, and go to this meeting or this? It's a document, but that's okay. He's very capable and he's ours. And we're going to support him. Does he manage me? Yes. Do we, yeah, we talk a lot. I was on that call with him last night at 9. Okay. Anything else? Did I cover it?
No, we appreciate that. Just a question from a fiscal standpoint, hearing about the degree of cuts that you think are on the horizon, I can't help but think it's hard to cut your way to prosperity. So what's the growth plan? I'm just imagining with declining enrollment, you have to be looking at sort of portfolio optimization in terms of,
Yes.
Do you have the requisite number of schools and utilization rates to make it make sense to have that infrastructure in place? And but the only flip side solution to that is how do you make Fayette County schools a school of choice, a district of choice, and get those numbers back up? The CTE angle definitely sounds like part of that, but just wondering about the growth plan. And I saw where there was some questions related to staffing and turnover and other things, particularly at this school. And so it seems like the growth aspect of it should draw in talent to help with staffing issues, but allow you to just provide some feedback on
Sure.
that.
Thank you so much. Well, obviously we can't, due to the consent order, we can't close schools. So there's certain things, parameters we can't touch at this moment in time. However, sometimes the old saying goes, you have to prune before you can bloom. You're gonna cut that rose back to that 7th leaf, but it's going to turn into a beautiful rose. And so we are going to have to prune some, and we're going to have to live within our means. So that means we're going to have to take on things. And in the past, we've had staffing so that at the 2 junior high middle schools have had basically the same amount of staff, whether they had the same numbers or not. So obviously, to go to your west aspect is that we've changed that to enrollment. So as they have students, obviously they're going to have more teachers and more support there than the other middle school or junior high school that has less students. But as a whole, just like with West, we've got to raise our test scores. We've got to raise our test scores. We've got to have people that want to come and want to stay there. And of course, the next thing we have to look at is our growth. Our growth is happening on the west side, where we have one high school. So first off, we're going to get our house in order. So we're going to live within our means. Then, of course, once we live within our means, then we're going to be working on our test scores, and we do that all the time. We have principal meetings, and they present their data. Where are you? How's it going? Who needs help? Who do we need to focus on? What teacher needs this? What teacher needs that? And we dissect each one of these. They've done PLCs. They're doing that twice a week. So those are the type things that we're diving in full speed. But we're doing that across the district, not just at one school. So we're truly changing the culture, change the way we think. And then here's the other thing. We've gone to site-based management. In the past, it was all handled at the central office. Okay, well, you know what? I have turned the central office and I've told them, I asked them, I said, have you ever been to Chick-fil-A? I said, that's the way we have to act with teachers, with staff, with students, and with parents. How may I serve you today? And that's been a transition, because they've been just make this decision, make that decision, not being mean. That's just the way it was. We have changed that. Okay. You will respond within 24 hours. You will return that phone call. How may I help you? Okay. Well, they didn't ask. I don't care if they didn't ask. You offer. And so we are changing that. And if it doesn't work, I am going to put everybody on a bus and go through the Chick-fil-A drive-through. But the point is, we have to do it differently. And we're making that. Again, Mr. Keel is the new deputy. Ms. Elliott is the new finance. Okay. Dr. Griffiths is the new principal. And we've hired people that don't mind the work, that don't mind to put the effort in, because they have a vested interest in this county. They want to succeed. So we're going to get the right people, quote, on the bus, and then we're going to move the district forward. But that's where we first have to start. The culture, after the culture, the test scores, after the test scores, working with our community, working with our particular, elected staff, and say, we need your help. And this is how we're going to go about doing it. And I've been up front with them. I mean, I meet with them. I don't sugarcoat stuff. I meet with them every month, and I tell them, this is where we're at, this is what we got to do, and this is where I'm going to need your help. And they've been very receptive. The mayor's been very receptive, and we're starting to have county commissioners become very receptive.
I think what you said is you guys are really making a difference for the entire county, which is great.
We're trying.
But we're here specifically for a school that's failing.
Yes, sir.
So as I look at the data, I see the school's got a high percentage of teachers on permits.
Correct.
As well as a high percentage of teachers with less than 2 years of teaching experience. So I want you to do well across the district, but we want you to get the school not to be failing. So what specifically are you doing for this school?
Right. Well,
besides bringing in a new principal?
Yes, sir. Well, we have the hiring and retention. Okay. We have a hiring retention committee, and we are looking at those things. How can we improve? What aspects do we need? We do have some incentives. So those are the type of things, okay, what can we do differently from that standpoint? But we've also, not only that, we've also been looking at the data as we go along. And I'll let Mr. Keel, our deputy superintendent, talk about as we are examining, doing as we're checking where we're at. I think there's something very positive. Mr. Keel.
Sure. So one of the things that we've done this year is we have, and I think Dr. Mack alluded to this, is that we have two principals that have done turnaround work, but they've done it in Fayette County. So these two really rock star principals, we've leveraged them to first start with building the capacity of all of our principals to do turnaround work, because we have two priority schools in our district. We have an ATSI and a TSI school in our district. So besides West Junior High, we need to grow the capacity of these leaders. And so we've done a principals academy where they're basically training these principals on what have they done at their schools to do this turnaround work. This means that they're doing weekly PLC meetings, twice, 2 in a week. The first one is about planning. So on Tuesdays of each week, and this is what's going on at West Junior High as well. So on Tuesdays, the teachers get together in PLCs and they plan their instruction for the next week, where Dr. Griffith and others can give feedback to make sure that they are teaching the state standards at grade level and doing it, aligned to the team rubric. And then on Thursdays, or the second, usually they're on Thursdays, we have the data PLCs. And so that's where they look at either their benchmark assessment data or their classroom teacher assessment data. And so Dr. Griffith has implemented that, but as Dr. Mack said, she had to do the focus on the school culture first. We already have some promising data. So if you look at your data sheet that shows what last year's TCAP scores were in 24-25 for all students, we literally gave our benchmark assessment right before spring break. So we dug in, so you know how that works. The students take it before spring break. Those results have come in. And so if benchmark 3 is an indicator compared, to what we're going to do on TCAP, our benchmark 3 for ELA is about 10% higher than what we had on TCAP last year. Math is up about 6%. Science is up about 2 or 3%. Social studies, we've gone down a little bit. So we've got some work in social studies, but the gains that we're seeing in math and English, we're already seeing fruits of the efforts that she and her staff have done. So it's, as you well know, turnaround work is hard work. It takes 2, 3, 4 years for turnaround work to see the fruits. But we already have data that's showing that some of the things that she has implemented at the school through the hard work of the teachers, we're already seeing some benefits of that. And so hopefully we're going to see that on the TCAP in a few weeks.
How long has she been the principal now?
This is her first year. We made the leadership change last June. So basically what we do in our district is, you get the raw data from the state, and after TCAP's given, you're given the raw data a few weeks after that. And so when the district, when I got the raw data in June, when I was serving as interim at the time, it was clear in June that the test scores weren't going to be good at West. I have a sort of a background in math, and when I worked for the department in the core office, worked in accountability. So kind of saw where things were going. And so we had to make the tough decision last June to make a change in leadership. And so we didn't really set out to do this turnaround model, but in essence, over 50% of the staff is new this year, and both the assistant principal and principal are new this year.
So with the increases that you just talked about, and I know this is real-time data that obviously we don't have and
yes, sir,
not official or something like that. What do you sense your growth will be this year? Because I'm looking at your data last year, and
right,
your growth of the greatest need students was a B, but your overall growth was an F. So do you sense that you're going to have a positive growth pattern this year?
Well, I think Dr. Griffith, you could probably speak more to at the individual students, because the way TVOS works, you have to compare those. You have to go student by student and look at their projections. I know back in the day, though, when I worked with districts, when you saw this type of achievement growth, you usually saw at least a level 3 or 4, at least a level 3 out of the 1 through 5 scale. So generally speaking, if you see a 10% jump in achievement, which in math and English, it looks like it's possible. There's no guarantee, because, TVOS looks at every student, not just the students that pass the test. And so you have to compare their actual score versus what they're predicted. Right. But I think that, and you can speak at the individual level, but I think that this is very, very promising for growth and achievement. Would you agree with that?
I agree that it looks very promising. I do expect that we'll have significant growth, especially when I compare it to TCAP of 2025. In a lot of ways, we really don't have anywhere to go but up.
When does that data become official? Do you know?
So typically what will happen is we'll get the raw data from the state, usually just a few weeks afterwards. Then in July and August, we get preliminary data then, but it's embargoed. So we get a lot of internal data, but it's months before we can review it. It sort of trickles out. So we'll get success rate data. Usually you get the success rate data first. Sometimes it just depends on how the state does it, but usually by the time school starts, we have a good idea about success rate and TBOS growth. Yes, sir.
And I had one follow-up question to this too, is that you talked about, I guess you now have a differentiated pay schedule or something like that.
We do, yes, sir.
So what does that look like from the school, and what's been the impact on that so far? Have you been able to hire key people or?
So one of the things that I do want to make sure that you as committee members realize is that a lot of the budgetary decisions for this year was made, prior to this data coming out. But what's in our differentiated pay plan, we do have signing bonus for special ed teachers that are district-wide. We give incentive bonuses to teachers if they have a TVOS of 4 or 5, if they're tested teachers in science, math, social studies, and ELA. One of the things that Dr. Griffith is planning to do for next year with federal funds, West Junior High will get both the SIG grant, that's the state, I have to think of my acronyms, that's the state school improvement grant, that's state funds. West Junior High will also get the turnaround action grant funds, that's Title I funds specifically for priority schools. She already is working on her school improvement plan, like as we speak. I believe it's due in a Thursday. When a school is a priority school, they have to rewrite and revise their school improvement plan. And she's already planning to put that differentiated pay piece in her grant funds. So in addition to the district-wide differentiated pay, she has plans already to put that in her grants. And so we saw a lot of success at East Junior High with one of our schools where they've done that in the past. Typically, they will tie it to level of effectiveness and TBOS growth scores for the tested teachers.
Just one question about the budget cuts that are necessary. At that level, is the approach to try to ensure that those cuts don't go into the classroom?
Yes, sir. As best we can, obviously. We're going to reduce central office staff. So, I've met with not only central office staff, I've met with different schools and told them, that you may lose one. We just have to wait and see. We've also tried to do preemptive as well. So if we had a teacher that left and they had a smaller class size, we went ahead and combined classes then. It's better to go ahead and do it now than later. So we've been trying to do it as we move along. But yes, sir, obviously at the higher levels, we're having to reevaluate our career tech program. We're having to look at the high school as well. And of course, we have a disparity because we have more students at West than we do at our East. So obviously, we'll readjust those numbers as well. So West, we hope will gain or not lose any from that particular standpoint, whereas the East might lose.
So with that, and specifically related to West, how do we ensure that Dr. Griffith has what she needs to be successful with her new tenure, or at least half of her team being new? How do we make sure that within the realm of these adjustments being made district-wide, that this particular school that's on this list doesn't lose resources?
Well, definitely. And I'm going to tell you something funny first, so it's a joke, so you can laugh, but it's true. She is an English major. So in the evenings when she's leaving, I say, okay, you can use your big words to me. So she has active one-on-one conversation. We have active one-on-one conversations, replaying the day. Have you thought about this? As this way, look at that. But as I said, and as Mr. Kill said, we really strive with our rock star principals. You know, that's open lines of communication. They're the ones leading it after school. And again, she's taking the initiative to come in afterwards and to actually learn more. And so we're excited about that. But yes, obviously, we don't want to be on this list. So we're going to put every resource possible from that particular standpoint. Obviously, another thing, we've worked with vendors to come in and actually work with our teachers to help them grow where they're at now, where they need to be from that particular standpoint. And then, of course, as we move forward, we'll be meeting with each and every individual. We'll bring in the junior highs as a group. We're going to bring in the high school. We'll bring in the elementaries, and we'll be like, okay, this is what we're projecting. This is what we anticipate. Okay, what do you need? What do you need in order to be successful? Obviously, with the parameters that we have, like anything else, because it's a priority school, because it's on the list. Obviously, we're going to put more emphasis on that than we would something else.
One thing very early you talked about were the challenges, obviously, from a financial situation that you have, which are really unique, obviously, with the lawsuit and everything going on. So from a board chair position, what are you doing, working with the school system, working with the community, to try and help some of these financial challenges that exist?
Well, let me make a statement that I'm listening to the conversation here, and there's a piece of data that bothers the board, and I'd like to get that on the table here. We just evaluated Thursday night our special education percentage versus population, and we're now at 24%. Now, how did we get to 24%? The schools around us will test and take, are gifted, but they will not take, and not required by state law, to take the brother or sister that is not gifted and is a special need. So then we are the school. We're the legal school in Fayette County. And we take all, and we educate. So now that percentage with the students going away from us, now we're going to get to the point that they want us. That's our goal. They want to come to us. But anyway, 24% is a big number. All right. So what do we, repeat that where I can, because.
Yeah. What are you doing with the county commission and with the district to try and have them recognize the challenges that you have and see if other funds are available or whatever? Because it sounds like to me you got a real funding issue with your declining enrollment from basically 50% over the last 25 years or something. And I know the state, quote, holds harmless for a while, but to get the support, the community support for the school systems in the community, what's the board doing?
It's a very complicated question, but when you have a county that has not raised property tax in 34 years, that tells you something right there. So they have a very smooth way, and I'm straight up. I just call the numbers whether I see them, and I know all the county commissioners, and we kind of like each other, I guess, sometimes, and sometimes we don't, but we talk. So and the communications. So the way we are funded normally is out of the taxes, and then we don't get any of the property tax or anything else. There's a question even whether or not wheel tax was handled correctly. We're addressing that. So you have a situation of about 1 year of actually having communication with county commissioners, and our communications now, it's working, but we're working at it. We go to the meetings, we give presentations, we give them communications. They ask questions like you do. They get the answer. So with the status of where we are today with the county commission, I never thought I would hear it. They are starting to say, we're going to have to fund y'all. And like, yeah. Wow. Okay. Now we're going to work every way we can with that county commission to figure out how to fund us because I pay taxes in that county, everybody else. Okay. So it's going to be, and the mayor, like we said, was on the phone with him last night at 9 o'clock. It was over a funding issue of how we make sure that we are going to be able to do by state law what needs to be done with Senator Wally and House Member Gant. Okay. So the county commission, and we'll believe it when we see it, may give us help this year because they never have, because they didn't really like the way that schools were, they're running, and they didn't like our grades. When you're sitting there at the bottom, you don't have a lot to brag about. Yeah, this county is very rich, is a high income county, sitting right there between Germantown, Arlington, Memphis. So we should, we're big county, but we should be able to finance and have schools. But we got 2 or 3 real strong private schools. So with that said, that's enough. Thank you.
One thing I will add, that the chairman and our vice chairman have been imperative, working with the county commission along with not only me. Like I present to the county commission every month. Ms. Elliott presents every other 2 weeks with the finance piece. So we've been open and transparent from day one. We tell them exactly where they're at. We tell them the good, the bad, the ugly, I call it. And so we've been completely open and transparent, and I truly think it's making a difference. When the mayor called, why did he call us on a Sunday night? Why are we talking 9 o'clock at night? There's a bill before the legislature that will cap property taxes at 2%, which will be devastating for us because the county hasn't helped us in the past, and they're open to help us. And they're starting to, and then this bill comes in the middle at 2% cap. That would be devastating for us. So, but we have opened those lines of communication. So I think it's very positive in that regard. We've already been meeting about the budget ahead of time, and the mayor's like, okay, well, how can we help? What do you need? Which is a whole lot different than it has been in the past.
You mentioned early on that your funding went down under TISA compared to BEP. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, it's a transition. You go from we were BEP, so we had 100%, then 75, then 50, and next year will be 25. But because of the funding floor, we will be able to stay level. But if we did not have the funding floor, it would be $2 million less than the previous year. So, and again, it's just like you said.
That's because the enrollment is down,
The
right?
enrollment's down, that's correct. And of course, there's also costs involved. Yeah, and also as we've had to also go up on the pay raises and things like that as well. So there's a lot of factors that come into play from that standpoint. But as you well know, that funding floor is going to last so long because even though that we don't have to meet the lower numbers again, but as inflation rises, it's just a matter of time before that funding floor will go away.
Can you describe for us the student population makeup at West Junior?
Well, we have approximately 73% that is that's BHN from that particular standpoint. So 59% Black, 26% white, 14% Hispanic. Economic disadvantage is 34%. SUD is 17%, and ELL is 12%. So, but when you do BHN, I think that's like 73% of the population.
Okay, well, we appreciate you coming before us to answer our questions and present. We're at the portion of the meeting now where we share our thoughts and deliberations and ultimately make a recommendation to the State Board of Education. So feedback from my colleagues. Yes, sir.
Well, first, let me say, I think this district is on the path in the right direction. No doubt about it in my mind. I'm really impressed by the new district superintendent. And I think the things we heard from him are very, very positive. That being said, we still have a school that's dropped from a D to an F. I know it wasn't under his leadership, but we've got to be sure that, that F does not continue. But I think the challenges that they have, obviously from a financial standpoint, make it very, very difficult for them. But the leadership that was shown today, whether it's with the superintendent or the board chair or the principal or whomever, I think they have the attitude and the culture to get this thing changed and turned around. And I think they need to continue to move in that direction.
I concur with Chairman Eby's thoughts there. I do think, Dr. McPherson, you are turning this district around. Board Chair, I do think you've, from all appearance and all information, chosen wisely, you and your colleagues. But we are charged with, taking into account these 340 students, and it is not personal, as Chairman Cobbins said earlier. I think you're making tremendous steps in the right direction, and I look forward to seeing those steps continued on and hearing about your turnaround that you're doing in this district.
I concur. Dr. McPherson, I know we saw each other at Superintendent Study Council in January, and you told me, I'm telling you now what I'm going to come tell you in March, and you have told us. But recognize that tough decisions have had to be made, and you've made those, recognizing the challenge. It's really interesting to me that based on a prior conversation we just had with an LEA, that there are people who walk towards a challenge rather than running away from it. So your leadership and your board's leadership, Mr. Speakman, speaks volumes, and you definitely are making the right steps with those conversations with the county commission, because ultimately that investment has to occur for you to have the school district and school system that you want to have. As it relates to West Junior High, echoing my colleagues' sentiments in that there's a lot that still has to take hold and a lot that still has to coalesce for it to come off the list. And so we want to make sure that there's time for that to occur, and that you all as a team, and you appear to be a great team, are putting forth the effort to push that all the way through to fruition, where we're not having this conversation down the line. So with that, is there a recommendation from the body?
Mr. Chairman, I think their action plan is probably going to be a lot what they're already doing, but I do believe that it's important to formalize that action plan and take that to the state. So I would recommend, if no objection, for an action.
There's no objection. We recommend corrective action plan for Fayette County Schools. And I just want to reiterate that corrective action plan is not punitive. It just takes everything that you've told us, puts you in partnership with the State Department of Education to see that through to fruition, and it be codified for public transparency and all that this process is supposed to be about. So we thank you for coming before us today and wish you all the best. And now, I will entertain a motion to recess until 9 a.m. Tuesday morning. Tomorrow.
Second.
All right. We're recessed. Thank you.